Good evening. We're all set? Good evening. Welcome to the March 13th Village Board meeting. This meeting is officially called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are you going to act as clerk this evening, Corporation Counsel?
Yes, Mayor. Trustee Herrera.
Present.
Trustee Bazemore.
Present.
Trustee Quezada.
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Is there a motion to move into executive session for matters of personnel regarding specific persons?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. With that, we will step out, have a brief executive session, and then we'll come back and we'll continue with a number of topics. And exactly what we do next is to be determined. It's very exciting. All right.
Okay. Mayor, can we have a motion to move out of executive session and into the special legislative portion of the meeting?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, tonight we have one, actually, I have one resolution that's been provided to the board. I also have another one which I have prepared in draft because I was not sure how we wanted to finalize it. This relates to the pier extension project. I know Gareth Huffam is here tonight. We also have our planner, Tracey Corbitt, here as well. It might be helpful if Gareth could just come up for a couple of seconds and give us a little bit of a chat as to what we're talking about and specifically what the elements are for these two resolutions that he's requested from the board. Gareth?
Good evening. So you all know about the project from a couple months ago. Where we stand now is that there is a new Department of Environmental Conservation grant opportunity that we would like to put an application in for. In fact, we've been working very hard for a couple of weeks and it's almost finished. The grant is for, the maximum grant is $375,000 with a 15% matching grant requirement. It's a very rare opportunity because you almost never get Hudson River access infrastructure grants anymore. And even more special than that is that this one does not require having a shovel-ready status. So you don't have to have all the Army Corps of Engineers permits and so forth in place. You can put in for the grant with a design and permitting component before the construction. So that's really great because it fits our needs. We're very close to getting permitting for the pier that we've been working on, but we don't have it yet. So this is a great opportunity. I hope we can take advantage of it. The main sticking point right now is how do we pull together the matching grant component. So the match that is needed turns out the number is $56,250. And we've been talking with Ginsberg Development, who is also interested in the pier and has always been supportive of the pier. And they, I don't have a firm commitment from them yet, but my sense is that they are willing to go like 50-50 with the village. And I'm hoping that they come through with that as a commitment. So if that is the case, the village would be required to come up with a commitment of $28,000 as well. So also, just as a matter of history, the village of Awning previously committed $15,000 to the existing project, which they didn't in the end have to tap into. So that's sort of 15 off of the 28 already. So we're really asking for whatever the math is on that, a much smaller amount. What is that, 13, something like that, 13,000. So anyway, that's where we are. I'm hoping very much that the board agrees that this is a good opportunity and that it's a good ratio of investment to what we could get for our waterfront from it. So I'm happy to take any questions. Oh, yeah, so here is the most recent design. It's called Option 28, because we've gone through many.
I'll hold it for you.
Oh, thanks. Let's go. So this is Option 28, and just to orient you, this is where the large archway sculpture is. This is north, the Harbor Square. This is the current pier in this cross-hatching color. Over here is the ferry, the existing ferry. And so what we're talking about, eventually, the whole package of trying to get built is a approximately 200 or 225-foot fixed pier section, which is that. And then in future grant opportunities, we'll have a floating component here that could accommodate tall ships like the Clearwater. And these two boats here are shown to scale with the Clearwater. And also 1 or 2 blocks of transient docking for smaller boats. But in the grant that we're hoping to apply for this week, it's just for about 3/4 of this fixed pier component, because that's all that the $375K plus the matching grant combined could pay for. And once we have that, then we're in really great shape. It'll already be a very functional pier. It'll get us to about 9 to 10 feet of depth, whereas currently we're at about 5 or 5.5 feet of depth. And that's at low tide. So already it'd be functional for, getting some of the tall ships like Clearwater in. Wouldn't yet be ideal because they like to have the floating component, and we want it a little bit farther out than that 3/4 because we want not to burden the Awning Boat and Canoe Club's space too much, and we've come to some agreements with them about that. So we will eventually want to get out that extra 25 or 50 feet, but for now, we want to get out to the 9.5 or 10-foot depth. And we can do that with this grant.
Gareth, where is the kayak launch?
So the current kayak launch is way down.
Where would it be on the new project? On this schematic?
Oh, there will be no new kayak launch on this project.
At all?
So that'll stay in the Engle Park, the town, although any one of these floating components can be used as a kayak launch, or for rowing shells as well, which is another, and canoes, small boats.
The reason that it was taken out was because the DEC was very concerned about the shadowing and the impact on the fish in the river, and so they had we've scaled it back because of their comments, and we thought if we're doing this in partnership with the town anyway, it would make more sense to have pedestrian type, like canoeing, kayaking in the town section over by the beach, and then have the motorboats in one section, because you don't really want the two to really cross over.
When the DC objected to our having that dedicated kayak float, which was going to be in around this area, we suggested instead that we do something on this side, but they nixed that because of safety issues with the ferry. Yeah. But any one of these floats can be used for launching small human-powered boats.
So I'm very pleased that we've gotten to this stage. You've done an incredible job at balancing a lot of stakeholders and regulatory agencies to get it to this point. We always knew there would be matching funds. It's not ideal that we feel like we're rushing now and we're a little under the gun to be ready for next week's grant application. And I'm kind of surprised because you're so good at keeping us in the loop and emailing us. So I'm not sure how we got to the point where we have to hurry up and vote on this tonight, otherwise we'll miss the deadline. But I remember in 2014 that we were applying for grants for this, and we were required to earmark 6 figures in our in lieu of parkland funds for a grant where it was not an 85-15% matching. This is a really, really good matching ratio for us. And I'd assume ultimately part of that $28,000, it's really $28,125, I guess, if we're doing exactly half, if that's how it turns out. And I am a little disappointed that we don't have a firm commitment from Ginsburg at this moment while we're voting on this. But some of that can be offset by in-kind
Yes.
contributions, because I know that part of the reason why we haven't spent that 15,000 that was already committed is because you collected all of our, even my paltry little hourly wages as part of the in-kind dollars for all of the meetings that had taken place and the work that had been
That's right.
undertaken, so.
Yeah, and to
so-
confirm, this grant RFP specifies the in-kind matches are fine.
Now, Debbie, my next question would be from you, as far as the source for the funding. Do you have a strong recommendation? I think we've been talking about it from the In lieu of Parkland Fund. I know that Ginsburg had mentioned the Downtown Development Fund, because of course he feels a connection to that fund, so perhaps that's why he raised it. It's also a significant contributor to potential economic development in our water fund, so it wouldn't be inappropriate for us to consider this as a capital project. So what would you recommend as the funding source?
I've always thought that we were going to be taking it out of the in lieu of Parkland funds. And so my recommendation is that we continue to do that, and that we do partner on this grant, because it is a rare opportunity. I think Gareth is absolutely right. But we could also, in the future, if we have to build other elements, that's when I think that we might have to look at what those amounts are, and whether that's a capital improvement or if it comes out of the Downtown Development Fund. I know that he was instrumental in helping set that fund up. That has not yet been discussed with the people that are here that from that fund. But I think all options are open. What I'd like to hear from all of you is if you are committed to still being a partner on this, because I do think that we're not going to have to take taxpayers' dollars at this point out of the general fund, that we can have a park fund where we can take those funds, and that is our park. And it would be a great enhancement to have that. And the more people that we can bring in, I think it's also an economic opportunity for us.
Would it be would the entire amount come out of the in lieu Parkland funds? So the original 15 that were never used in addition to this, so the entire, our whole match would come out of that?
Yes.
Okay.
So our 28,125.
How much
Yeah.
do we have in total in that fund right now?
Oh, Tom, do you know that answer? About 400. We have about 400,000.
How does that relate to the rec department's capital projects for the next, 4 years?
That's a really great question. And Bill?
I'm
is
for it, by the
here.
way,
Are
just-
we using any of the parkland funds at
We have
this
two
point?
capital projects for this year.
Come to the mic, please.
Welcome back, Bill.
Thank you. We have two capital projects this year, the renovation of the 3 basketball courts and the LED lighting for the basketball court at Nelson. So that could be about 300,000.
Those projects would be 300,000. So, did you say when there wasn't commitments from Ginsburg on this? I mean, it's not a new project. Why don't we have their commitment?
Well, I think that what they're doing now is we're waiting on theirs and they're waiting on our commitment. They want to make sure that we're going to be committing to this project.
For some reason, maybe Victoria can help us, or maybe Paul could help us with some of this. For some reason, I remember that he actually did a bigger commitment than just matching this. It was more than that he was willing to put as a part of this project. Said $100,000. He thought.
I don't recall that, but it's possible.
Because it was bigger than this. It was bigger than just matching at this point. So maybe.
I think
I don't know.
the last round, it was $25,000 commitment.
Before that, it was when we were dealing with the park, when we were dealing with all of the stuff, when we were trying to finish it up, some of the side improvements that, I don't know, it's a couple years, more than
So-
6, 7 years, actually.
You think there's something in the LADA about it,
I don't know, I think nothing?
specifically?
Okay.
So I think that what you're remembering is there was a contribution to helping install that park, but I did find a letter that said that they would be willing to contribute 25,000 towards the pier itself.
Okay. What is the total project for this? Do you have a number for the whole project, yes. Yeah.
So
It's okay, we'll wait.
for the total project. So for the total project, including, the completion of the last quarter of the fixed and all three components of the floating would be about 1,100,000 and change. So it would require at least one more phase to get all of this. But it's also possible that once we get the fixed pier and the one floating component that I consider essential, which is the one that can take the tall ships, the board can decide how much farther it wants to go. Certainly, the transient boating is important to the economic development, so I would suggest continuing with at least one of those, but maybe two of those. But all of it together is about 1,100,000. Let's say 1,200,000.
So question, we could vote, I'm definitely in support of the project. Now, voting on the resolution, is the resolution stating where the fund is coming from? Like, does it,
Didn't have that in there.
okay.
And what the draft was, I'll just read it, was that resolved that the Village of Awning Board of Trustees authorizes the expenditure of up to $56,250, which sum represents 15% of the $375,000 Hudson River Infrastructure Access Grant sought in connection with the Village Pier Improvement and Restoration Project. That would go up to it, as, if for some reason you didn't get the match you anticipate from Ginsberg Development. And 56,250, I believe Garrett said, is the 15% number.
That is the 15%.
That works out to that, so.
So that would-
That's
so
why
that
I
would-
drafted this way.
So that would allow us, in a worst case, to submit the application and have it reviewed. If we didn't have that, then the application would be rejected out of hand.
So again, I'm in favor of the project. I don't know if I'm in favor of where the actual money is coming from. Debbie, can you remind us, how do we get that payment in lieu, payment like the park and payment of lieu
So
fees?
I believe that money is given to us when new projects come along and they don't provide parkland for us. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I would somewhere in that resolution say contingent, well, I'm not speaking for the board, this is just a suggestion, contingent of Ginsberg, GDC's contribution of set amount. Because if not, then we're talking about doing the entire match from the village. That's all. Then it's a different story, because we're investing a lot more. But we're stuck in a hard place because we don't want to stop the progress to submit the actual grant, or to be considered for the grant, if I'm right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
So one way or another, I need to be able to demonstrate that the total amount has been committed by whatever mix of parties. But if I don't have that, then it's dead.
So if we vote on the resolution for the 56, does Tom come back with it, when the actual money is actually being retrieved, does Tom come back with a resolution authorizing that amount?
Oh, you mean if we actually get the grant?
Yeah.
'Cause right now, we don't have the grant. This is just a commitment so that we can go for the grant.
Exactly, right. And you would have an opportunity, later on, by the time this grant comes through, conditions may change, I don't know, opinions may change. We wouldn't have to execute the contract if you didn't want to. So this is all just to allow us and the village to apply for the grant. And then if we get it, it's a nice problem to have, to decide to use it or not.
So Debbie,
I think we all want to use it, but.
so if we do the resolution, and we say, hey, we're giving them $56,000, we're not really deciding today where that money comes from. Am I correct on that?
The resolution doesn't specify, right?
Yeah.
Right, but is it in lieu of Parkland? Is it
Yeah.
downtown development fund? Is it general
Yeah.
fund? Do we have?
Like, do we have to figure out where the money is coming from today? And would there be a follow-up resolution when we actually have to pay out that money?
It would have to be.
Oh, yeah, there would have to be.
There's a transfer of funds.
Okay.
Because we'd have to authorize the contracts for the for the build.
I have a similar sentiment. I mean, I know you spoke with Ginsburg's representative, you said 3 times today, and they're definitely interested in continuing to support this. I do think that's essential for us to be able to demonstrate, because they're huge stakeholders, and they are huge beneficiaries of this, as is the community.
Clearly,
But they personally, as an entity at that location, I think we need to be able to tell the community that they are contributing to this and making this an opportunity for us. So I don't know, without having a fixed number, I'm not sure how you can wordsmith that into the resolution. With up to 56,000,
I did that more just because as a finesse, so that they could get their 15% to show it as part of their application.
Right, right. But
But
can we,
I
is
will,
there
I
a
will
way?
tell you this, I spoke to Joe D. myself earlier today. And, one, he was going to speak to Martin Ginsburg, but he also mentioned the Downtown Development Fund as another possible avenue of some of the funds being paid. Not having raised, an understanding that had not been raised with any member of the DDFC. But,
They had one member, right?
well, Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, but he hadn't discussed it with anyone else. So, and that call was at about 3:30, 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Well, he could show up at a meeting and suggest that they make a recommendation to the board.
But in any event, that's why I was prepared this way to assist here.
I just wonder, is there any way for us to incorporate in there a phrase that acknowledges that that's sum up to $56,250 to be shared with Ginsburg Development Companies?
I like that.
If we can't put a dollar amount on it, do you feel that we can pass a resolution acknowledging that they have committed to it, we just haven't negotiated
Finding
it?
them before they.
Because otherwise, we just
No,
give
I'm
everything
for
away.
it.
If
No,
we
no, I'm
if we
for it.
pass it without reference to them, then what incentive do they have to give us any money tomorrow?
It's a chicken and egg problem, which puts us in a difficult position, because I agree with you, if we say, oh, well, in a pinch, we'll pay the whole thing, then we've lost all the negotiating capital. But on the other hand, if we can't, one way or another, get, written commitments up to that amount, then the grant is null and void. So
And they understand that they're holding up the process by not committing.
I believe they understand that.
No, because like, it's a big project, so much work has gone into it,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And we, yeah,
we're
and
gonna
they,
need more investment
Yeah.
and
and they were involved all the way along.
forward even after this grant.
Yeah, and they've actually been paying for Ed Weinstein's services, right? No?
So they, bring you up to date on that, because that was a question that came up earlier today. Maybe 4 years ago, when this whole thing was just starting, before we even had the current grant in place, they paid Ed Weinstein $7,000, seven and change, for an initial design, which was abandoned. And then when we came on board, Hudson Valley Arts and Science, with the grant that we got from DEC, then we have been paying a Weinstein ever since.
Oh, okay,
So, and that's where the grant has been going.
okay, okay. Rika, did you have something you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I mean, they're a huge beneficiary of this at the end of the day. And I cannot stand this conversation. Being told at the last minute for a project that's been going on forever, and all of a sudden it's the DDC fund. That's not what it was designed for, and you can't just keep pulling money out. So I like what Quantel said, which is that it's gonna come back, because they're not just a partner, they're a huge beneficiary of all of this. And I really we have to be careful with parks, with that fund, because we're now right at the tippy tip. And with all due respect, there are just as many people interested in this project as there are in basketball courts. So, there is a balance involved. So I don't know who's supposed to talk to whom, but, this is sort of an awkward conversation to be having.
Yeah, I agree. And I will, I'll tell you that when Jody and I were speaking, and he brought up the Downtown Development Fund, I said that from the village's point of view, it didn't really matter where their, we were at this point talking about half and half, right? So it didn't really matter where the village got their half from, but that they would not be allowed to take their half from the downtown development fund.
That's village
So
money,
that's what I
actually.
said, yeah.
Right.
So I wanted him to understand that whenever he was talking about the downtown development fund, he couldn't be talking about taking his half out of it. And I believe he acknowledged that.
Okay. All right.
So, we have a long agenda again ahead of
Okay.
us. How do people feel about moving forward with
On this
the resolution, and are we modifying the language at all from what Stuart had previously read to us?
Let me just throw this out. The first paragraph would remain, resolved that the Village of Awning Board of Trustees authorizes the expenditure of up to $56,250, which sum represents 15% of the $375,000 Hudson River Infrastructure Access Grant sought in connection with the Village Pier Improvement and Restoration Project, and be it further resolved that the Village of Awning Board of Trustees calls upon Ginsberg Development Company to honor its commitment to contribute up to 1/2 of the requested match for the aforementioned grant.
Oh, there's two resolutions that we're doing after tonight.
The second, let me deal, there was a second resolution I had drafted. I had a lot of emails with Gareth and with Tracey this week about environmental quality review acts and things like that. This is actually and I thank Tracey for this, is actually a type 2 action, which means it is exempt from environmental impact statement, it's exempt from seeker. And that's because it falls within one of the now 45 categories of items that do not require those type of reviews. It's an addition to an accessory use. It's not more than 4,000 square feet. It doesn't involve a radio tower. One of the things that the state's put in there. That said, because it is neither a type 1 or unlisted action, under our village code, a consistency review is not required, because our village code only requires a consistency review for type 1 or unlisted actions. And Gareth, maybe you can just help me with this. I know you and I were talking about consistency review. Has the state, as part of the grant, are they requiring a consistency declaration?
No, not
Okay,
correct.
fair enough. So if it's, we actually, and I want to thank Tracey, Tracey did, and we sent it to you folks, did complete the consistency review and also the short environmental assessment form. In view of the fact, however, that the consistency review is not warranted
Great.
or required, we don't need that, and that would also allow, if we thought necessary, the EAC at some point to look at this,
Great.
should they have some review. So it's really just the one resolution that I have now done. I'll read it again so that we can,
No, we got it.
We got it.
okay, so,
It's 5 of 8.
so is there a motion?
So if I could
Oh.
add one thing there.
Oh, of course.
So while it's not required.
We can't, they can't hear you. You have to get to the mic.
So while it's not required that the LWRP consistency review be completed before the grant is submitted, I think that the more we can demonstrate ahead of the game that there are no environmental problems that we anticipate, I would think it would strengthen the application. So if it's gone through the LWRP process and was favorably reviewed, then I don't see any problem. I mean, I can see an advantage in sort of including that.
The only issue I have with that, Gareth, is unfortunately, and it's not your issue, we only learned of this last week. And our
okay.
EAC only met 2 days before that. We tried to schedule a meeting.
Got
They're
it.
all private
Oh,
folks.
in
We
that
couldn't
case,
get a
yeah.
meeting.
So in that case, no problem. We'll just,
Go to the next meeting.
But yeah, why don't we ask the EAC to
We'll
do
put
a
it on their
full,
agenda.
because I know Tracey looked at it, but we do have a process where and Gareth and I have both sat through that process and gone
Right,
through
I
on
was
a
on that
number of
committee for-
development. That's how I met Gareth, we were on the EAC together. And I think it's 34 different points that they'll go through and identify anywhere they have questions for consistency, and then hopefully they'll come back with no issues or have all their questions answered. And then even though the submission will have been made, you can always
Right, we can
submit
always-
something
that's right.
further, recognizing,
That's fine.
it can be a statement from whomever in the village is appropriate.
That sounds great.
Is that okay?
Yep,
Because then we'll be following the process
Sounds great.
appropriately from our perspective, because we don't want the EAC to be circumvented.
No, certainly not.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Gareth. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you
Alrighty.
very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn the special legislative session and move into work session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Alrighty. Announcements? Anyone? Really? No announcements?
Still possible.
Okay, then I'll wait for let's moving on, because I can wait for this. It's not happening for a couple of weeks. Next up, speaking of the Downtown Development Fund Council, we have some visitors with us. Debbie, do you want to give us some context here?
Oh, sure. The DDFC has been working very diligently on a Clean Streets initiative, and they're here to give you an update on where they are with the campaign and to discuss a little bit about a potential art project. But I think, and when this project is actually going to launch.
We get snacks.
Yes, you
We
get,
get snacks.
You get snacks. As a reminder, that this is,
No, really?
Throw it here.
Yeah.
Right.
Why are Omar and I being left out?
Nothing comes for free.
right,
What you will have to do in return for
right. It's an anti-litter campaign, so make sure everybody cleans up after.
picture
You
yourself
gotta say it there when we're done.
Okay,
dropping the wrappers into the trash can, into a trash can.
okay.
Okay? That's what
That's the catch?
Yeah, that's the
So I
job.
get to eat the snack, I just have to prove that I threw the waste away in the trash.
They're
when I'm
gonna
done.
tell us about it when we're
Okay.
done. Are we moving out of the way
Yeah,
for something?
Yeah, I mean, sure.
You're doing another thing, okay.
While she's doing that, I'll just get started.
There you go.
Yeah, that's probably good enough. And there's some handouts that are basically are reflective of what you'll see on the screen. So you can also look at the just single copy of printouts that I brought. But first off, thank you to the mayor and the board for having us here tonight. The members of the council were very excited about the progress that we've made on this anti-litter and code awareness campaign. We believe it's going to be a huge success not only for downtown but the entire village. The campaign, it's very whimsical in nature. It's going to have multiple elements that are all built around the tagline, tiny actions, big impact, which the concept simply but clearly defines the message that collectively, the smallest gestures can lead to a greater Awning. And as I mentioned, here's a sample of just some of the artwork that will feature both in English and Spanish. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was scrolling up. So this is one example. Yep. Sorry, these are, and like I said, there's handouts that you can look at. All right. And as you can see, the tiny actions, big impact, playing off of the tiny figurines, but showing, big things that are occurring. Apologies if I'm scrolling in a very broken sort of way. And as you can see, here's also some Spanish language versions of it. Just the last one that you saw there. So, we're certainly excited about, the way the visuals are starting to work with the campaign. We're thrilled that we're also going to formally announce the kickoff date, which is appropriately enough, Earth Day, April 22nd. We're going to have an event at 9:30 at Market Square. I know some of the members of the board will be there. Other, representatives from some of the other stakeholders, and we're just really excited about that. And we'll also have, we'll be unveiling some of the other elements, such as, out-of-home advertising, some of the banners that'll be on the light posts, garbage can wraps that'll all be reflective of the campaign messaging and design work. Later that week, we're also going to be at the Green Awning Earth Day Festival, and so, the hope there is to extend, spreading the word about the campaign even more through various, ways. And certainly that's always a big audience, so that'll be great for expanding the message. We've also been working on a brochure that's going to get mailed out to residents and business and property owners, and it highlights the codes and responsibilities that so everyone can easily be informed of the role that they play in doing their tiny part to make big impact. The team from Honest, who we're working with, Honest Creative, that you met previously, they've been working on a website. They shared it with us the other day. It's very interactive. It's vibrant. It's in English and in Spanish. It's got a lot of great information, and it also links back to village website pages, so building department, forms if you need to fill out for various reasons. So it's great in that respect. And then there's also, it'll also have features that allow for interaction, social media type interaction. There'll be videos on there. It'll also link to our Facebook and Instagram account that'll be associated with this, so that people can share, images and positive stories that relate to the campaign. We're also working with the school district, to develop some perennial actionable items. We haven't finalized that, but we're really hoping to, like I said, come up with some actionable items. We've offered up, potentially trying to co-opt for anybody who has kids, the 3 Ps program, maybe, adding a 4th for pristine, so that it becomes a way to extend the campaign reach, beyond downtown and throughout, residents for many, many years, because that's a portion of the program that can continue, beyond just the initial launch, obviously. So we've been working with them and the Chamber of Commerce, and obviously I mentioned Green Awning. We've been in talks with them. So, we've had some good communication with stakeholders and been, working with them on trying to make this all come to fruition. So, that's just some of the things that are right around the corner that we're really excited about to launch. And that brings us to, tonight, one of the things we're equally excited to share is our latest concept, which is an art installation contest that we've talked about. The goal in this, it would be a great way to generate interest and buzz, which, again, are all key elements to making this campaign a success. And so the contest would be to design a recycling receptacle, but not your traditional, just circular can. It would still be, something that would have to be, to code, 75, no more than 75 pounds or 30 gallons. But something that is out of the box and unique and reflective of the campaign. Again, not just to give an example, maybe it's a, big sign that says, recycle instead of, just a circular can. So, so the goal would be to create something like that, and we have a set of parameters that we've developed that we would put out there to, sort of, give a guide to how this contest should work and what the deliverables are, and we'd like to share that with, a number of local groups that we think, could really be successful at something like this. Certainly the Arts Council, the Awning Art Project, and a couple other groups. And so what we would like to do is ask the council or ask the board for an additional $5,000 to add to this with we'll have a contest. It'll be, the designs will be judged, and the winner will receive the $5,000, which will then, which will go towards design work, the materials, the fabrication, and any costs to deliver the final product. So, like I said, that's something that we're kind of, not kind of, but very excited about. And again, we think it's, it's a great way to create more buzz, and certainly, if people are going to be involved in the contest, especially with some of the groups that I just mentioned, that also helps to extend getting that message out about the campaign and getting it out into the public conscious and awareness. So, again, a lot of great things that we're closing in on the finish line, and we're excited about, and that's pretty much it. Remember to throw your trash out after you enjoy the snacks. But yeah, so any questions, we're happy to answer. And as I mentioned, we certainly would also want to get your feedback on the art installation portion and the additional funding for that. So.
Thank you. Excited for Earth Day's launch of this project you've been working on so diligently. I don't have to start. Does anybody? Rika, do you want to comment about?
Yeah, I
the,
wanted to
contest?
actually frame the conversation, so thank you, Andy, for this. I'm the liaison to the group, the Downtown Development Fund Council. It's a unique group. It's not necessarily an advisory group. It's a little different from a lot of our other citizen-driven groups that works with staff and electeds. So just to frame it a little bit, so it's 4 people who represent pretty significant group within the community. They work full-time, so the fact that they put so much effort into this, and Debbie, I want to thank you also, because I think you actually attended more meetings than I did. It's because the emails really are sometimes on a daily basis, and the management of it. So when citizen groups put that much effort into something, it's beyond a once-a-month meeting. It's daily, it's weekly, it's continuous. They all work full-time, which is, I think speaks volumes to the dedication. So just a little bit of the journey. There is a desire by the group to, and has been for a while, to look at how code enforcement is done and how storefronts look and how sidewalks look. And we sat through a couple, this is an update. It's like the 3rd one actually in the process. And there was sort of a confluence of 2 needs. One is not to be so punitive about just ticketing people about the trash and the codes, because there was a feeling by some of us that not everyone understands all the codes about how to keep the storefronts looking and the sidewalks looking and the garbage disposal in public space. So maybe just everybody being on the same playing field. So the whole idea of a whimsical environment, which is what we discussed at the last update, is something that came out that said, let's get the community involved. It's not just, a brochure that tells you what to do and where the codes are. That's part of it. But the other part is to really say that it's not so difficult to keep a community litter-free, but make it into something. Social media will actually play a big role in this, as will a brochure that will be printed, not in the usual, no offense to all the staff that's sitting in the audience today, which is unusual, that, the way we normally print up government material, as sexy as it normally is, we thought that this would be a better way. It's much friendlier, it's much easier to understand. It drives you to a website that could continuously be updated. There was a stakeholder meeting, which I believe was discussed, so that's sort of the next step that involved the school and a whole bunch of other. And I think that last piece might be new to some people, in that out of those conversations came the idea. So when you said we, when I heard it, it sounded like, the 4 of you sat there and came up. But in fact, my recollection is that it was part of a stakeholder meeting and part of many conversations that occurred, that wouldn't it be really cool to invite the community to some sort of a contest where people would design something, not unlike, for those of you that are familiar in the high schools and middle schools now with maker spaces, where people really of all ages can design things. They don't have to be engineers. Artists design things, woodshop people design, everybody designs things. So wouldn't it be really cool if we invited the community to be involved with this? And they're working, I think, with the school system. It's just about timing. Like, we were supposed to have the meeting by today. Lots of conversation with lots of different groups and input into the way things should look. So we're like, that's the update. We're now at the point of, wouldn't it be really cool to do a press conference on the 22nd? You said Earth Day, because I believe schools are closed that day, correct? So we're hoping that that would also engage the community in coming out, because we hope that the school will be involved. And wouldn't it be really cool a week later to be involved in really the county's largest festival, you know, for Mother Nature? You know, I mean, really, we have the biggest event and participate in that, and that allows people to ask questions in the community. And the biggest point, which I know, Andy, we've all discussed as a group with the people, and I know they're listening, they're going to be watching the video later, is that it's not just a community involvement. We didn't want this to be a once-and-done use of money. Like, everybody gets excited, it gets rolled out, and we're done. Really, the vision here is for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Maybe the mirror of not just downtown, but the rest of our town benefiting from this. But, you know, you got to start somewhere. So this is the discussion and the update to the board. And I'm sure there are many questions, but for me, it was just framing the journey of how we got from point A to point B, and how important the school and the kids in the school are in really getting people excited and getting them involved, as well as our businesses, as well as people who live in downtown now, et cetera. So that was for me like, and the money is in the fund for this purpose, for these guys.
So could you please explain the artwork component? You had mentioned like someone creating a sign that says recycle or something like that?
Well, not a sign. It would
Oh.
actually be a recycling receptacle.
Okay.
So, like I said, instead of just a normal can, you know, again, you know, it'll be interpreted by whoever wants to enter this contest. But the example I know, you know, a couple of people have seen. There's a beach. I don't remember where the beach is, but they were having litter problems with you know, just bottles being left all over the sand. So they created a giant wireframe of a whale, and with a little sign that said "Feed the whale," and basically you put the bottles in the whale's mouth, and it would fill up and be this colorful, you know, freestanding wireframe sculpture that would then get emptied every day by you know, the DPW of whatever town it was. So something along those lines, where it's you know, more than just a can that's sitting there. It's something that you know, you're going to take notice of. Again, what that design is, who knows? But again, it'll be within the confines of what we would normally have in the codes. But like I said, it's not just, the excitement would be in, you know, the buzz of the contest itself, and the designs and all the people and or groups that are, you know, potentially involved in it. And then once it's actually executed, again, it's something that's noticeable, you know, when you're walking by, again, you know, just to use the whale as an example. If you saw, you know, a giant whale on the corner of Main and State, you know, you're going to notice that, you know, as opposed to just a, you know, your average, you know, recycling kit.
So the additional funds is to actually pay for the actual receptacle?
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, to cover all the costs of, again, you know, design work, the materials, fabrication, you know, if there's delivery costs or, you know, any of those costs. So we thought that was a, you know, a fair number to, you know, cover all potential costs.
All right, and how many receptacles?
Well, we discussed that in a number of ways. We figured we'd start with one, see how it went, and certainly if it's something that everybody, you know, that has the desired effect that we're all hoping for, we could certainly do a couple more. Again, not just downtown, but, you know, throughout the village even. So.
Paul, because you're here. So a number of years ago, we took up garbage cans from downtown. So now that we are doing a campaign to encourage people to keep the neighborhood clean, but definitely to throw out their garbage in the right place, my question is, are we going to be putting the garbage cans back? Or maybe.
I'll answer that.
Can I piggyback off that question? Just
sure.
because I think it just
Absolutely.
time-wise.
Go ahead.
And then I'll touch on the other point. So last time, I addressed not just the issue of the removal of certain cans and the move of them to other locations, but all the other internal challenges that we've had, whether it is the enforcement of litter or code violations or alleged selective enforcement when it comes to what a storefront looks like or should look like. I to this day I mean, especially as a resident in that area, don't really know where we have gone or what progress has been made specifically with all those three, but mainly with one that you mentioned. I, along with 3 neighbors now, 2 other ones actually do it every day. I do it like every other 2 days. We pick up quite the amount of garbage on our tree wells, and mainly from, like, I would say Lillian's Youth Center to like the Karma area. And so it's not just a matter of are they going to be replaced. It's my frustration when they were removed. It's because we kind of, all due respect to those involved, we were like, you know what, we can't enforce it. It's too much. We can't really do anything, so we're just going to take them away. And I disagree with that. So I still don't understand how that was addressed and how the other 2 issues I mentioned are going to be at least vocalized so I could understand before the launch in April.
Right. So there are 27 garbage cans in the target area, but they are clustered. Like there's 2 or 3 in one location, or 2 or 3 in one location. And so we had talked about not adding more, but spreading them out where they make sense. The other part of this is the partnership between the government and the private business owners, the property owners, in a way that I don't think that we've seen before. And that is that, you know, I give a great shout out to the staff because Joe Augustinelli and Paul Fraioli, I mean, we've all come together and said, how can we enforce this and what do we need to do? And they helped write the brochure that is going to be the educational piece. So part of that is that every business owner is responsible for keeping their part of the sidewalk clean, and we know that isn't happening right now. So, you know, it's gonna take a ground up, you know, effort by the other businesses that are downtown to, you know, encourage the people that are beside them to take care of their. But we're also going to be there in the background if they don't, so that we can do the enforcement part. And now that we've ramped up and we have more enforcement officers, we're going to take care of that. And we know that it's going to be a lot of effort in the beginning to get everybody educated, to encourage them to participate in keeping it clean. And if everybody picks up their little part, I think that's going to go a long way. I also think if you're seeing these signs out on the poles and you're seeing the wraps that say, you know, keep it clean, and we put them in strategic places so that you have an opportunity to actually throw a piece of paper out or a cup or whatever, instead of having to walk a very long distance. I know the Upper Crest, I walked the Upper Crest, and I was like, there's no place to throw this out, and I want to throw this out. And we're looking at all of that, but it's also that partnership. So we're going to be there for the businesses, but we need them to be there for us as well. And better enforcement. If we find that some of the residents are bringing their garbage down, which was one of the issues prior and one of the reasons why those cans left, then it's going to be on us to figure out who's doing that, and then to go to the property owner and say, you need to educate your tenants. Where are your garbage cans? And then we can do a lot of checking in that respect too, and make sure that everybody's informed about where they're supposed to take it, and not just on their way out for whatever reason they drop it in our cans.
You know, that's great. I just, you know,
Yep.
I know that I'm biased as I live there, but just that
Yep.
you know, you have a lot of businesses and traffic that create a lot of potential garbage in the area. Mainly, you know, a lot of high school students, a lot of, you know, it's just a very, I mean, all of downtown's active, but that particular area. So, you know, when it first happened, you know, how come you took it away from in front of my business, but not the other business down there, right? So
Right.
when it comes to equity, we want them to work with each other, but we're not taking everyone's can away from them. It creates a whole notion. And
Sure.
regardless of whether we figure it out now or later or during the launch of this awesome new campaign, we still haven't had a discussion as to why we couldn't address the illegal dumping being done by residents on that street. And I still don't really know how to let the majority of food establishments know that produce a lot of garbage or have a lot of people that hang out or sit or sleep in the Upper Crescent to manage it. And regardless of this campaign or not, we just haven't enforced the owner's responsibilities
Right.
to keep the curb maintained in the first place. Now we are.
So,
But actually,
I
I want
think
to throw this ball to
I think you
Andy.
actually, I'm not sure you talked about that either. You may have missed that part about No, to Omar's point,
Yeah.
I may not have heard it, and I'm not sure you said it, so I don't know which it was, but there is an outreach as part of this by the village to every business owner's tenants.
Right, so I think,
That is a Debbie takeaway from a meeting we had 2
Yeah.
days ago. I'm not sure you mentioned that to speak
I
to
don't
this
think I did.
exact
So,
point.
right, so,
Part of
It's
this.
like a book.
yeah, so the
creating.
well, yeah, I mean, the brochure we did mention, but the key is, to your point, like, we've done some tinkering, if you will, for lack of a better term, take some garbage cans away, this. But this is an all-out, this is a loud splash. I mean, again, the campaign itself is bright, it's vibrant, you'll notice it. It's going to be, like we said, you'll see them on, garbage cans, you're gonna see them on banners, there's gonna be brochures, like we said, that are going to, everybody that will be involved. We're trying to, make it a grassroots campaign, like we said, so that, the kids at the schools are, aware that, and they're taking that home to their parents, and, the groups that we mentioned, whether it's a Green Awning or, an arts council or arts project or whatever, they're spreading the message. The social media aspects of it, that will be going out, so that they're, we're flooding the message, basically. And so, again, is it going to solve every part of the problem? Probably not. But it's more of we're acknowledging that, this is an issue that we want everybody to be, a stakeholder in being, part of the solution. Not just residents, not just property owners, not just business owners, the village as well. And so it's it truly is an awareness that we're trying to put out there. And hopefully, if we've done this right, a fair percentage of the issues that we're having will, start to abate because of people being aware of what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it, and again, in a non-punitive way up front, but again, if need be, as time goes on, that portion will happen as well if needed.
Thank you, Andy. In the interest of the very lengthy agenda that we have ahead of us, I think that the questions that have been raised are really significant, and people can chime in with whatever else you think is really important to talk about this issue, but we also need to get back to the $5,000 that's being asked for and exactly how that's going to be
No, 'cause
distributed.
that's actually the only thing
That's
asked,
I'm sorry?
because that actually is the ask.
Yeah,
The
that's
rest is
the action that we're being
the
asked.
action. The
This
rest
other
is an
stuff is a
update.
great update, and I'm excited for Earth Day, but are your questions related to that, or are you still talking about trash can placement? Not that that isn't important, it is, it's just that it's.
I'll be on that for a while, but no, but I just wanted to suggest, when I see this is just a suggestion, downtown Awning, that sounds like a tourism site to me.
Right.
Great, I think it's great, but I just don't know if that's like the appropriate vocab to use for need streets type of campaign. And
Right.
this is just an
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
It's something that,
Right.
but, and then,
Bet.
is there any way to just add the village logo or name that people could know that it's a village-sponsored and funded project on all that we do, all that we publish? A little thing somewhere,
Right.
something. That's all.
The seal
Sir,
The seal would be good.
in the bottom corner somewhere, whatever.
It will be on the website in different links, and it will be.
Right, we haven't printed these yet, right? We haven't
No.
printed the banners yet, so they're,
We printed them, we're just showing it to you.
no,
I got 20,000 in my car.
that's a good point. Now, the downtownaustin.com, I didn't really think about it, but I like you said, you went around and around and around in
went
circles, so do you
around
want
quite a bit.
to tell us how you landed on that? Because I'm sure there were suggestions that were more focused on the clean streets, big actions, little whatever.
I mean,
yeah.
you guys can weigh in too, but again, we discussed, pros, cons of, again, one of the reasons being, again, it's a downtown-centered project, although, again, the hope is that it has legs that go beyond downtown. So that was one reason. Again, trying to incorporate Awning in there, again, to your point, making, maybe we didn't take it to Village of Awning, but making sure that Awning was within, in the lexicon so that you knew what it was about, I think those were two of the biggest points. I honestly,
Some were taken.
off the top of my head, I don't remember what some of the other possibilities were, but we did, have conversation about, several different iterations of what it could be. You know, like anything else, you want it short, you want it, you know, something that's easily remembered, easily, you know, accessible. So,
We're buying all of it, right? The .org, the .net, the .biz.
I'd have to double check on that, but,
But if not,
right,
I could just do a downtown Austin thing and,
right.
you know what I mean?
I think we asked them actually
I
on this,
think so,
because
I
I
don't
always do
remember.
that for my own organization when I buy all of them.
I have a question functionally. We have a village website, and then is this going to be a sub-site of the village website?
There'll be a link to it, but it's an independent website at this point,
That's created and managed by whom?
by Honest.
By Honest? On an ongoing basis?
Well,
Well, at least for the term of their contract, we can certainly, you
Which
know,
is-
So they
discuss.
bought it then.
we own
I
it.
think well, I don't know, you guys know better. If the village, I think, owns
I
the
don't-
domain name, I
they bought
honestly
it,
don't
but
remember.
I don't know.
I would be curious to know what were some of the other candidates, because
Yeah.
when you say downtown Austin, my question then would be,
Mm-hmm.
Is the expectation that this website will later be used for things other than the Clean Streets campaign? Because otherwise, if our focus is on clean streets and
Mm-hmm.
code enforcement, then why not like clean Austining or whatever?
I'll be-
And you've probably had this conversation, so you
I'll be
can
very
just tell me
candid,
why it's a terrible
I do
idea.
recall that we had some conversation about that, but I don't remember what I did 2 hours ago, so.
It was so long ago, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
So we'll go back. So
Yeah.
here, I think the bottom line is this. Number one, we own everything, and
Right.
it's in the contract, and that should include all the domain names. Number two, it should be, let's go back to the names we use. Some of them were taken by others. I mean, some of them are, you know, the way we got to Neat Streets, because it exists somewhere. That's why we call it that. And number three, that all of the dots, everything should be owned. Everything's owned into perpetuity by the village, which was part of the contract. But I don't remember
Right.
all the names, and why was yes on this and no on that, because it was like a number of meetings ago, so it moved well beyond that point. So, we'll go back to that and just ask them.
So with respects to the $5,000,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
reason we got on the conversation of actual garbage cans, because I kind of want to know what you're going to be
Right.
doing with the $5,000. And we can have a conversation about placements, because again, if you go from the train station, there's one garbage can between the train station and Main Street Deli, and it's actually by the old Civil War Hospital. So again, if you ask for $5,000, I want to know, what is it going to?
To the creation of the,
But how many
Material
and
and
then
stuff.
where?
Well, no. Okay, so let's clarify. The $5,000 is in addition to all of the redistribution of trash cans and the wraps on the trash cans. The redistribution of trash, the wraps on the trash cans is part of the original predetermined
right, what
fund.
we've already, you know.
Those funds have
that's
been allocated.
correct.
You're moving forward with
Correct.
that.
This is a separate, an addendum, if you will, to the campaign.
Right.
Another way to generate excitement, buzz, you know, activity, and basically, you know, awareness.
Right.
So 5,000 for the one additional can that isn't really a can.
Right. Which is not a trash,
Right, it's a piece of
Receptacle.
art. It's a
Right,
piece,
the-
it's a
the-
functional piece of art is what it is.
right, the functional recycle bin art.
If you look at other communities across the country, in fact, the world, part of all these litter camp from London, when we showed you that video, like, was this a year ago? I don't even remember.
The gum art and
You
everything.
know,
Yeah, I remember.
apparently toilets and receptacles are two items around the world that people like to design. But no, seriously, every campaign has a focal art point of, like, the whale isn't like a little whale. It's the size of this room. And it really brought the whole town to understand how much garbage you're leaving on the beach, because they fill this thing like, oh my God, like this is all going to water. It's artwork, which is why they want to use the art groups and the schools. And it's the design, it's the materials, it's a winning prize at the end. It's like, if you do something small, you'll probably produce 20. If you do a big whale, that's the size of this room, you're probably producing one and putting it on the waterfront. We don't know the answer to that, because we don't know what anybody's designing. We just know that it's a design, and 5,000, I mean, you could say 5,000 is too little or too much. They don't know where it's going to be. They just thought that this would involve a contest, communication, materials that different groups are gonna need to do it with, replication of the model that then gets voted on, you know, like the whole thing, and that's what it might cost.
And the first one would go in Market Square.
Oh, well,
Let's see top of Main Street, but
Well, wherever we decide to put it in a
know if I'm
high-profile
deciding.
location, either of those, I mean,
Doesn't matter.
200 Main Street could use
There's a
high
number of
scope point,
places it
but-
could go. You guys will figure that part out
Right,
eventually.
but I think we do need to be clear, and maybe I need to clearly understand this. The $5,000 is largely going to be producing this. So people need to design something that can be then produced and then can
Correct.
be functional. And you talked about the parameters being established to be consistent with village code for sanitary, sanitation.
Right.
I don't know how limiting that is, but I think it would be really important that the DPW that is involved in evaluating these, or perhaps even in putting out the description of what is the
Yeah,
expectation. I don't know what the appropriate role is, but
Yeah, we had started
helping
a.
to create things that are potential actual
Right.
selections.
We put together a description, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we ran it by you guys, right? Did it make its way to you? I can't remember. But we were cognizant of, like, this needs to be something that is, it's not just, hey, I'm going in my workshop and designing something, and it's not gonna be functional for you guys to, deal with.
It'll be full once,
Right,
and
exactly.
never empty. That's not
Right,
the
exactly.
plan.
And again, we'll have a panel, to judge the entries, and, again, nothing is finalized, but we would certainly, in talking about how we were gonna do this, we wanted representation from various groups, including, all the departments
Again,
this would affect.
And they would probably get veto power, so we would rather just people design things that are viable.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah. Please.
This is really awesome. Very excited about what's going to happen on this. Just had like maybe 2 or 3 questions. What was the funding for this particular, for phase 1, if you want to call it?
I want to, is 72,000, I think?
I think it's
So
75,000.
there was an allocation of $75,000. 48,000 was allocated to Honest for their contract. And then the rest of the money was going to be used on things like this production. There's a video being produced that's coming out. And
What is the
marketing
budget
thing.
up to date right now? What do we have up to date
We
that
still
we're gonna
have,
spend?
so we still have 17,694 left, but we have not been billed yet for video editing and website development. So we still have some outs,
They're coming for
We know what
different.
this is gonna cost?
and we
This
don't
is-
know what
this is
that's
the-
going to cost yet either.
We've
Do you
been
have the prices
investigating.
out yet? So
We're in the process of
We're-
pricing
yeah,
it out. I
right.
mean, it's a couple $1,000 so far out of some of the.
The banners? The banners are only a couple $1,000?
No.
No,
The
the
banner's
brochures,
already in the budget.
brochure part.
Oh,
The banners, we have the numbers, I can't remember, but it's,
The banners and wraps, $6,465.
yeah, they were, how much?
$6,465.
But then we also have the trash can wraps, too.
Includes the wraps.
That includes the rest? Okay, that's
And I think the installation too, right?
And installation, correct.
So they've reached the budget. The reason they're here they wouldn't be here for 5,000 if it wasn't, but it's about 75, and now it's this context is like, how much would that cost?
Not only that, but the money is not coming from the community, it's coming
Right.
from a fund.
The downtown
Well, that
development
is their
fund.
thing. It's the,
So,
no,
so
it's actually
my
says
concerns is
site
actually
fund.
were raised before, it's like the maintenance of the website, because if this is a whole thing, it's like, now you coming to us asking for this $5,000 additionally to this particular project. But who's gonna be maintaining this website? I just kinda hate the fact that it's somebody else is doing it, instead of we having control, and then after the term expires, then we have to come back and try to figure out what was happening. So that's a concern that I have. Nothing that can be addressed right now, but
Right.
it's something that
Should.
you should be looking into and see what happens. And see who within our staff is gonna be maintaining that portion.
Right.
And how does that go forward? Because if we look at this in a 5-year program and then we wanna expand, then it's totally different animal, sure.
Absolutely. Great question.
I really don't have a problem with the $5,000. I think it's something great, something that is gonna come back to the community. I think something, New York City has done it in different ways. Brooklyn, even parts of the Bronx have done something similar to that effect. I'm okay with the $5,000 at this point. I just, what is your time frame in that particular project? Because you have deadlines for this.
Yeah, so again, like anything else, it's all contingent, one of the
course.
steps would be to get the approval from you guys. We've got a loose schedule of, the hope was to try to announce, once securing the funds, if we did, trying to get it announced as quickly as possible. Whatever, just to cut to the chase, our hope was that we could actually have something finished and fabricated and in place, by the end of May, give or take, which, it's aggressive, but, again, it's nothing set in stone. That was, a pencil outline. Certainly could
You don't want to
extend
lose
it.
the momentum, sure. That's
Right,
what I'm
well,
trying to
we don't want to lose the momentum, but at the same time, we also want this to be a continuously updating campaign so that, again, it's like, I think Rika said earlier, it's not a one shot and you're done. It's a continuous, like, making the public aware. So, again, if we have the launch April 22nd and some other things are happening over, a week later or 2 weeks later, even if this is, 2 months later, it's another reminder, hey, this is going on.
So, Debbie, quick question. The contract that we have with this, with the company, Honest, what is the length of the contract itself?
It's a one-year contract.
It's a one-year contract. Okay. And when did that start it?
Yeah, thank you.
So pretty much, the agreement of their
Through the
maintaining the
summer.
website, when does it stop? It stops in July?
Probably, yeah, I would assume. I get,
Get answers to that.
So again,
So
all that stuff comes back to
Right.
money-wise,
Absolutely.
sure. It's like, how do we control that?
right,
Because you're looking at May.
right, yeah, yeah.
We're looking at July, and in the contract, so all this stuff. So I think that the number, and I don't know, I don't want you to keep coming back every couple months to ask for, money. I think it should be more like a whole list and be like, how does this breaking down? So that's, I don't know if the rest of the board feels the same way, but that's
Yeah.
how
I feel like I'm hearing consensus that there's support for the $5,000. Am I hearing that right? There's a lot of other questions that are related to this, but if the ask tonight is for $5,000 for the contest, well, we can't, if we're gonna move forward with printing this stuff, we have to, like, we want the website to be on there. I'm not crazy about downtown Ossining, but I didn't sit through all of those conversations to figure out how you landed on that, and there's probably other things I'm not thinking about. So I don't wanna undermine progress on this, but I think Neat Streets Ossining or something that talks about what the actual campaign is makes a lot more sense, and maybe there's a reason that I'm not thinking of why it can't be. But for tonight, I don't want to undermine this, but I do want some of the concerns that have been raised to be considered before we pull the trigger on any of this stuff. But are we at least comfortable with being able to tell the Downtown Development Fund Council to move forward with continuing to finalize what the
Art installation.
the art installation application or process, the submission process will be? And are you, the April 22nd news, the big splash that's beginning then, you're not expecting these banners to be up then, or are you?
We are.
They go up the week before.
Okay, good. And where do you expect to be? Is that when you're announcing the contest? The launch of the contest?
I believe that was what we had penciled in.
Okay.
Again, nothing is
Okay.
in
Okay.
pen, but
I just
yes.
want to make it clear, the contest came out of so many of these meetings. It may be next year. They
Right.
just had, and because they need to come and update the project anyway, they thought, hey, new idea. It may not happen, it may happen. The launch is all about social media. The reason there's that square is that part of the launch is take picture of yourself doing something, put it on Facebook, that piece is really the launch. The education, the direct mails to property owners and tenants, explaining codes to people, because it turns out, as we said a year ago, people don't know about all what they're allowed to do in the windows. This came out of something, so we're hearing people not waiting till the last minute, but actually giving us a big heads up on something they would like to do in the future. I'm not sure you'll be ready by the time press,
Okay.
because it diminishes all the other stuff you really want to do. This is just an idea. May happen, may not, you'd like it to happen, I think is the way.
You know me, I'm
To say it,
full
yeah.
charge ahead.
So is there a resolution that has to be passed in order to grant?
Nope.
No, if we transfer the funds at once, but do you guys need, are we giving them the okay to continue designing the art installation submission form. That's the stage you're at, right? And then if it's
Correct.
ready for the 22nd
forward,
to be
yeah.
part of the announcement, great. But is
I'm
everybody okay with that?
but
I'm okay with it.
Enough people are okay with it, and so there's definitely still some questions, and I think that's true for
Correct.
all of us as well.
And, are
Thank you.
you supportive or
Yes,
no?
I'm
Okay.
I was watching the nod, so it wasn't an
Oh, I
official
see.
vote,
I
it was a
missed the- I missed
nod.
the nod.
It was a 4 out of 5 nods.
Just have a lot of questions about.
But I think 5 out of 5 still questions, so, but,
Well, I think
and 5 out of 5 happy and excited for the progress and really looking forward to it. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Our pleasure.
Excellent.
Thanks for all your.
Thank you. We have a really big next item, and then we have another item. Does 2
Stretching.
people need a break, or do we, okay.
Who said yes?
2 people said yes, that's enough. Do we have more screen work? Debbie, do you have presentation? Oh, we will, Tracy.
We will, we will for Tracy.
I know.
Yeah, yeah, because,
All right, so why don't we get back to work here? You all set there in the control room? All right. All right, well, okay, Debbie,
All right.
next we're moving on to the 2019 Village of Austin projects list.
all right, thank you, Mayor. What I wanted to bring to your attention is all the different projects that we have on the books for each of the different departments. The executive team is here to answer any questions. I wasn't really intending to bring them up to talk about projects unless you have specific questions about something. There's a lot of work that we're planning to do this year, and I think that it's important when we look at what we ask our department heads to do, and when we come up with new projects and new ideas, that there really is a lot of work that they are currently undertaking right now. And we will be using this to give you monthly updates on where we are with projects and progress. And if some of them are not going to start till later, I can add that. That's a good suggestion. You know, some of them may not start until August, or may not start until March, or whatever. But we are intending to get all of these things done. There were a couple of rollovers from last year that we did not get done. Those are italicized for you. One of them is 200 Main Street. We're still in discussions with Route 9. I know that's a big project for the municipality. There was, just some flow charts. There was our master plan, or our comprehensive plan update that because we did not have a planner from March to August, that we weren't able to start that process, so we're starting it this year. So there are a couple of things that were rollovers, but for the most part, we got almost everything done last year that we had set out to get done. At the bottom of the list, I had put a couple of things that dropped off. One of them was the installation of the Tyler technology systems. I would say that the consensus of the staff, the consensus of the town who also uses this, that they hate the program. So we didn't want to continue to implement more units when what we have is not working. So we've dropped that off. We're not looking to install any more of those units. We are working with Stuart, and there's a form where we can withdraw from those units and not have to pay maintenance, and then we'll go forward on how we try to get our money back for those units that were never installed. There was create an economic action strategy, and we believe that that'll be something that is part of our comprehensive plan. So we're not listing it as an independent action anymore. And then there was hire a marketing firm for outreach from last year that we did not do. And again, we look at that as maybe something that we're doing through the comprehensive plan. You may have a different opinion on that. Yes, sir.
Question. So the money for the marketing plan that we did not do, is that money still available from last year?
Well, it's rolled into the general
it's rolled
fund,
into the
and then
general
we did budget a little bit, not as much this
Okay.
year for marketing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. But I really wanted to give you, and if there's anything missing, anything that we talked about that you were expecting to get done, I did ask a couple questions at the bottom, which is, what are the 5 things here that are most important to you, so that we make sure that we stay on task with that. How do we prioritize them? If there are conflicting obligations, what are your thoughts on that? Which are the ones that are the most important? Those kind of questions. So I hope that you've had time to really go over it, go through it, look at it, and I'll kind of open it up for questions, actually.
Well, I like you asking us to identify what are our top 5. I think that might be a good way to
Start.
Well, I mean, we've got 4 pages of 4-page list here, so
Right.
if we don't narrow down what we're going to talk about, then we'll be here until tomorrow.
Right.
But I think Quantel, 50 days.
So Stuart, I just have a question. She
Sure.
had just mentioned trying to get our money back from Tyler.
Right.
What is the likelihood of us actually being able to get our money back after purchasing this kind of software?
I think there's a strong argument. The first thing we have to do is to get a, did I do something wrong? Oh, I'm sorry.
She's yelling, she's waving.
No, she's not calling anybody, just me.
Oh, I'm like, what?
Sorry.
we will most likely have to sue them to get money back
Okay.
from what already has been paid. The issue going forward is not paying for what we did not get, because we've already been billed and paid certain funds. But to get back what we already spent on goods and services that were not provided, we're going to have to sue them.
Okay. Now, I don't want to get this confused with, this is Tyler, this is not Municity, this is not,
Munis,
this is Munis that we're,
the
okay,
accounting system.
okay, so we're talking about the same thing then?
Yes.
Okay,
But it's more than that. This is not just the accounting part, because there's other, as Debbie
Other-
mentioned, there's a bunch of other stuff that
Platforms,
we
right?
have, we
Yeah.
haven't even used, that we've been paying for it, so that goes back, like, we've been paying stuff for the building department, the building department's not having been used. So things of that nature, so it's more than that.
and
Clerk's office and,
so you had mentioned during budget season about you were thinking about doing a whole nother platform, there's
yes.
those partners, is whatever that software that's going to be used to replace that, is that here? And mentioned in the priorities?
If you look at finance, the very last item there says analysis on selection or installation of new accounting software. So yes, that's what that is.
Okay. And that's been budgeted for, as of, for this year?
No, I don't believe we budgeted for that. So we're gonna have to look at the money that we're gonna save from not paying maintenance fees and the money that we would spend. So I have not done the cost analysis because we haven't had pricing yet.
Okay. Do you think that would be something that's, would actually be completed this year, or would this be like something that really would probably be
So we are,
towards the end of this year, like
Yep.
maybe the beginning of next year?
that's a good question. So the company that we're talking to very seriously right now, there are elements of the Munis plan that were not installed that we can install first. And then at the end of the year, we would change over our general ledger and our main accounting functions, because you really don't want to change that in the middle. But all the other elements that were not utilized from the first system, we could implement those first.
Has the staff had a chance to do like a demo, like have they?
Yeah, we have that coming up.
Okay,
So the company's actually going to come here and set up machines so that everybody gets a chance to play on it,
okay,
so that we can really test it out and see if it really is working the way we're hoping that it works.
okay, all right.
We have done a demo. The company's come here. We did it on, here as a presentation, but we really felt like we wanted the staff who actually use it to come and play with it and see what they think. And that's going to be coming up here in April.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to take you up on your offer I'd like to take you up on your suggestion to identify 5 key projects to be priorities this year.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot on here that I know is happening and needs to happen, and the staff is leading it, and or in some cases, committees like the Downtown Development Fund Council are leading it.
Right.
But as far as big projects that, I think are really important for moving forward, and not necessarily in this order. Well, the comp plan is underway, and I think the board is committed to updating our comprehensive plan. So that has to be one of the big 5 projects that you're focusing your attention on. I wouldn't use the term master plan in my list of it. This is not a master plan, it's a comprehensive plan. It's just a matter of semantics, but it does actually have a substantive difference unless you're actually suggesting a master plan, which I don't think we've discussed that. So, but then the other big ones are, like, the Broadway Bridge, I have to put that on there because it's huge. It's driving me crazy that we're still shut down there. But I know it's going to be amazing when it's completed, and I know that there have been some obstacles to it running as smoothly as it normally would. But that's a big one that
Okay.
I'm looking forward to, but I want it to be more than just, okay, job complete. I want it to be a reason for celebrating our community. It's an iconic, it's not just an infrastructure project, it's a really iconic piece of infrastructure in our community. So it should be, we should really be celebrating it and putting some significant effort into marketing it, promoting it, inviting people to do a big ribbon cutting, at least as much as we did for the Sing Sing Kill Greenway. It's really high visibility. Besides, everybody's going to be thrilled that they can finally drive through our community in a logical manner. Then the other one that I'm interested in us moving forward with is, because it's going to be a multi-year project, and we have CDBG funding tied into it, is the rec center planning. And then my last one would be something that I think we're probably going to discuss a little bit, we're going to discuss next, which is the village parcels and our plan for moving forward with RFPs and RFQs. Oh, no, that's not my last one.
That's only
That's
four.
for Route 9.
Route 9, okay.
Another multi-year project.
Right.
We had one really great meeting with the DOT. You and I have had at least two
Right.
constructive conversations between us, but we need to reach back out to them, I think. Reach back out to them, take Sandy Galiff up on our offer to help facilitate a meeting for us at their office, their regional office in Poughkeepsie, so that we can, really follow through with providing them with the information that they wanted and getting them to start moving forward they had suggestions for some interim upgrades that could be undertaken just to work specifically on the hub of our traffic challenges, which is the intersection here with 133 and 9. But that's really just interim. Just like timing of lights and like a little bit of signage that they recognize just standing there in that space. And we haven't followed up with them. And I'm a little disappointed that we haven't. I mean, I know that Paul's followed up with his counterpart on some functional, operational stuff. We haven't followed up with them on the big stuff that really could be transformative for our community. It's right now it's a dividing. It's a dividing line in our community, and it should be something. It could be a roadway that is consistent with our bigger picture goals of complete streets, and it is right now the antithesis of that.
I mean, as you ask for priorities, I think it would be helpful to understand a lot of these projects are things that happen day to day outside of the realm of policy, right? So, say like road resurfacing, okay, of course, if you go and pave the roads, you don't need much conversation from us with respect to that. So now, of course, things like the comprehensive plan, absolutely, that's going to involve the board. Things like developing fee structures, right? That involves the board. So I just want to kind of understand as we're trying to figure out what's really like a priority, how much of that is. One is, what is the purpose, right? Because if the staff is doing one thing, maybe they can't come over here and take another initiative. But really trying to understand, like, if we're just talking about policy, that may not have a reflection on the staff per se. But just trying to understand the balance of
Everything you talk about has an impact on staff. Am I right? Everybody raise their hand. Yeah. Oh, come on.
There's a couple of things that you have raised. Oh, okay. The rec center visioning / rec committee being a part of the comprehensive plan. That's a question mark. So where did that come from? Is that something that came at the rec advisory board, or?
No, that was what we talked about as far as hiring a consultant to come in and help do a vision. We put money in the budget for that.
Okay.
Not a lot, but we put a little bit to have somebody come and help us reimagine what the community center would be. That's definitely going to have to involve the recreation committee.
Okay.
And then it'll probably become part of the comprehensive plan because we'll have an area in the plan on recreation.
Okay.
And that's how that'll kind of flow
Okay,
through.
so you're that's not part of the comp plan update process. It just, because we're determining it, it will just be a contributing statement as part of the recreation statement that it's part of the
Would it
comp
be
plan.
an update to the recreation statement, though, right?
Right.
So we would want to have policies on being able to expand our recreation programming and things like that, but we would have some sort of a vision that we can use.
PCI roadways. Where are we at with that?
We'll be doing that this year.
Okay. So we don't even have to discuss that.
Nope.
That's pretty much taken care of.
We're going to do that. Paul is going to be doing an early road resurfacing program this year, so we'll get that underway because we have such large projects with the construction of the water plant. The construction will be starting for the operations center. We're looking at October. October was on the timeline. There's a new one that I'll be sending out to you. We just met with the consultants on that. So we don't want to do late resurfacing. We'll do early this year, and then after that, we'll bring in this company to do the PCI.
So I think it's important that we definitely go over our fee schedules. We kind of we kind of delayed that during our budget season.
Right.
And we don't need to be limbo with that, so we're either gonna have to make some decisions about how we want to proceed.
Right.
Of course, you raised an excellent conversation about with respect to the affordable housing policy, whether that's a part of the comp plan or whether that's a separate policy. That's
Right.
definitely a conversation we need to have as soon as possible.
Sorry, could you explain that question? So the question is, should the affordable housing policy be its own policy, or should it be part of the comprehensive plan?
So that's the question that she had actually outlined for board conversations. So that's a conversation we would have to have. I don't know if we want to have that tonight, like right now.
No, not right now. I mean, the question is, I know that you've been talking, Stuart's written some drafts of some changes to affordable housing policy, but I wasn't sure if you wanted that to be a standalone initiative, or if we are going to talk about housing during the comprehensive plan analysis, if it could be commingled into that, just to save some time, that's all.
Doesn't it already exist in both?
Yes.
Like it is its
Oh, yeah.
own, it is its own village code that was passed in 2006, and we talk about affordable housing as part of the comprehensive plan.
Right.
Okay.
But if we're going to do it as part of the comprehensive plan, rather than doing it 2 times, that's what I was just trying to
The
think.
thing is, if we're not going to update, if the future boards are not going to update the comprehensive plan in the next 10 years, they need to be able to update the affordable housing policy 2, 3, 4 years from now, and something else comes up. So I think it still needs to be its own thing, doesn't it?
Oh,
And
it
this is
will.
a procedural thing, it's not.
It will. It was just, where do we look at the where do we do the analysis?
Okay.
Do we do it independently, or do we do it as part of this?
Okay. Okay.
That's all that question was.
So it could be like a subcommittee in the comprehensive plan
Absolutely.
work. Okay, that's a good way to possibly handle it.
I'm done for right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump off of something that you started with. So this is great, because the title of this is Project Lists. The problem is, it feels like a list. It doesn't feel like a Gantt chart. It doesn't feel like what you showed us 3 or 4 months ago that said 60% done, 70. So I thought I was getting that
Oh, okay.
with edits, so that we could see what's in progress, what's done.
Right.
So it feels to me like it's apples, oranges, and bananas. And it's
Okay.
very difficult for me to find like the 5 most important things, because I'm not measuring it. So it's like a laundry list. And what's great about laundry lists is it says, hey, this is all the stuff people are working on. But the reason I'm jumping off something you said, some of these things, frankly, I'm not needed in that discussion, right? There's staff, this is a village, there's a staff here, you know. I'm not really necessary in some, I like to know, and it doesn't even feel like projects to me. Some things are actual projects. So I look at the entire HR list, and from my perspective, it's what HR does. Now, it's nice to know what HR does, but like, I'm not sitting here and deciding whether we should or should not have union negotiations.
Right.
Okay? So
Well,
I.
actually, that's one that you're more involved in than the others, but.
And I will finish. So I am not being asked whether we will or not.
Right.
Right? And somebody here may or will be involved, and I'll have input. It's going to happen. So some of these things I would prioritize by, do I want them to be like a high priority, low, based on when it should happen. Some I would say, well, this is gonna happen, with or without me, and I have input. So it feels a little bit like, I don't know what to decide on 5 things, because the columns don't line up, actually. So a long-term discussion is not the same as a midterm project.
Correct.
It's either a major and immediate project, which is BAU, when you do strategic plans, business as usual, this is what we do, and these are some of the changes, and I need your input, and this is what I'd like to do, and we're looking at it, and this is the long term, like for next year. Or it's lined up by, we're 50% done, 90% done, da-da-da. But a lot of this is like business as usual. I mean, I'm looking at HR, you know, I don't know how to look at that. I'll tell you that we had something put in for rec that says that there is an assistant superintendent. But I don't actually, maybe I missed it. I don't see that. That to me would seem like a high priority, actually. But I don't know how to vote on a priority level, because it's actually not, you know, like, I love consistency in life. That's just me. So if we got that wonderful chart, I
Yeah,
think
last
3
year.
months ago, and
Yeah.
we love it, like, oh, look, 70% done. We couldn't get started on it because there was a
Right.
log in the road, and like, we got it. And the board has to tell me, you're gonna remove the log with money, with time, whatever, or you're gonna say, it's not a high priority. Love that. Here, I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a list, but I don't know what you want me to do with this list, because I'm not sitting there saying to HR, I mean, I could go through each of this and tell you my top 5. I can go through each of this and tell you my top 1. I could tell you my druthers list, which I've done, you know, many times, actually. So it's really hard for me to do this because of the layout of this information. Some of these are strategic things. Some are really long-term, but it's not differentiated here. And some you all just sort of do. And if there's a problem, it should be highlighted with something that says, we have a problem, we need more money. We can't do this anymore because X, Y, Z. That becomes a working document. I wish you would have gone back to what you did.
And I
earlier,
will.
Which I thought was great. This feels like a very different document than what I thought we were going to look at, which is a continuation of the other document
Sure.
to work off of and say, wow, great, you're almost done. Wow, you need more money for this. Wow, this, you know, like, I look at, actually, almost all of these departments. I don't know exactly, although the one thing I focused on was recreation. I'm not saying what happened to the assistant superintendent decisioning that we were supposed to.
Yeah, it's in the process of being hired, that person, but it's not on here.
But it's not on here, and that actually is not only a financial thing, but it's, for me, a strategic thing in making that decision. So I heard what the mayor said, I heard what you said and what you are interested
Well,
in.
not that
I
I'm
don't know how
yeah.
to make a decision based just on this list. I can make a decision based on many conversations we've had,
Yeah.
which is the community center needs a lot of attention. Welcome back, Bill. I'm glad to have you. You're looking good. We missed you at the last couple of meetings, and I mean that. I mean, people were genuinely concerned about you. Everybody felt like we're building traction. People are coming to these meetings. We invite them, we don't invite them. Everybody's very involved, and in a very good way. They feel like they can be heard. We've made some progress. I've told you how important the community center. I think it's the place in this community where everybody, all ages, all socioeconomic, all the backgrounds, all everything, it's a place to get together. For everybody, I'd love for it to be open 7 days a week, also not a project, actually, that's listed here.
CSEA negotiation.
Kind of, but actually not listed as a project, because I actually would say that's a project, because you could have the negotiation, and that may or may not be included, but it doesn't, like, if, it doesn't actually say that. That would be a strategic project, because you're changing, after years of doing something one way, you're essentially changing something, which will require money, negotiations. I mean, I would have listed that actually as a project, because it has an overall. So I'm going to take this home, because it's a great list, but I don't know what to, except for the assistant superintendent, how important the rec is to me. I expect roads to be paved. You don't need my opinion on that, so I don't know how to prioritize.
Actually, I want
For
to
me,
I want to thank you for that, because I was only able to pick out what I could pick out. So thank you for that, and I would echo her comments. Are we starting budget season in August? Is that a
Oh, yeah,
suggestion,
Oh,
or?
we always start in August.
Okay, so,
So,
She starts with staff.
they do.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
So what would be
you
helpful?
don't, we do.
All right.
It's a long process.
When I look at this list, I don't know if this list is going to dictate our legislative and our work sessions, right? Like when we so when you put that budget season starts in August, I'm thinking, okay, are we going to start in August? So if we're not going to start in August, as Rika said, if you could sort this out, what actually pertains to us, right, versus what doesn't actually pertain to us.
I mean, everything pertains to
Everything
us.
pertains to us, but
Actionable items that you want us to actually
Well,
say.
we have a role to play. Let's move forward.
actual role.
Right, like, you know.
While I agree with my colleagues, I kind of saw this as just, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think part of I don't want to call it confusion because you made total sense, and so did you. But I think this is how I read it when you said you were going to share this publicly into the board, is that you're kind of just letting us know, whether through a laundry list or just what's going on, because we didn't really give you parameters. I mean, we are now, and we usually give you parameters after you do something to make it better next time or make it more, but I kind of just read it as an update as to where you are, even though you included operations, but because when it comes to department heads, whether it's an update or not, it's still their daily operations.
So, well, am I hearing a question from you saying, Debbie, are you just giving us an update, or are you asking us for help in prioritizing, because this list is not achievable?
Oh, no, this list is achievable? I just wanted to know what was most important to all of you.
You could do all this in 2019?
I think we can.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
I mean, that's what you wanted to prioritize list.
I don't know
The
about
point was to prioritize it.
That's what you said last year. We got almost
do
all
that,
of
you
it
don't need
done.
us. Can I just tell you the problem with that statement? If you could do all of this in 2019 and we're in the middle of March, you don't need us to prioritize a damn thing. You've just done that. So I'm gonna just say, let's do a replay on that statement. Okay?
No, the
Because
last
you don't
page.
need us to prioritize if you could get all this done before October, which is when all we do is spend time on budgets for the following year. So
Well, it
some of
won't be
these are
done by
very
then.
long-term pieces, which is why I would appreciate, like, is it bigger than a bread box type of thing? I'll tell you what I can do. First of all, I said from the beginning, to Omar's point, a laundry list is a good thing. Like, it is important for people, when I walk around, people go, what do they do there anyway? They're not returning my phone call. Okay, they're working on 42 projects.
Exactly.
I'm okay with the list. I'm just saying I don't know what to do with it as someone who's in the legislative body of this discussion.
So
That's all I'm
the
saying.
intent was just to show you how much work we have and what we're working on.
So an
So
update.
when you talk to your constituents and you say exactly that statement, nobody's calling me back, they are working on all these different things, and
Got it, but with all due respect, not quite an update, because an update would say where you are on these.
and I'll do
And
that.
so what I
Yeah.
would suggest, happy to help, I mean, I'll go home and work on this tomorrow, but I would suggest that the columns make sense with each other. If you call someone a major and immediate project, then you can't do midterm, because I don't even know what term we're talking about, and
Okay.
then long-term discussion. So just like some suggestions, you might want to highlight what most organizations do BAU. This is business as usual. This is what we're working on, but this is what we are supposed, this is what we
Right.
do. And then there are things that are very strategic. They're like more than 3 years, more than 4 years. We do that in the budget discussion, where we say this is a 5-year
Capital
improvement.
projects.
But
Right.
as a standalone, maybe some of us, not me, but some of us know it in our heads, because we remember everything. But for me, that would be helpful to do that. I could point what I think was missing, which I already did, which is the superintendent.
Yep, got
and
that.
focus. So, I gave you the 2 things I thought were missing. There isn't a piece on here that says new things, right? So usually when you do a laundry list, it must be a quarter of the year into a fiscal year, and 5 months before the beginning of discussion of the next one. There has to be things that have to be on here that say, we're not gonna get to this. I mean, if there's nothing on that list, good for you, and there must be things that say, in order for this to happen, this thing happens first, that things are dependent on one another. It would be helpful to just go through this list with the staff and just say, is there dependencies here that the board should know about, that they may not know, that certain things cannot be done? I'm looking at the lights, that intersection line.
Okay, let me clarify one thing. The first column is 2019.
Okay.
The other 2 columns are other years,
Oh,
okay? I'm not gonna get
Reunite discussions are not happening in 2019?
Well, I didn't put it here because we had the water treatment plant facility, the operations center, the Broadway Bridge. These are major construction projects. So again, the thought is if we're going to have our engineering staff working on midterm projects, which is, in future years, in this year, but we're overworked by the amount of projects that we have that we're working on. There's only so much time in a day
no,
for us to get things done,
This
and
is
that's why
good.
it's like, well, I don't know that we can get to that because we need engineering to be a part of those discussions.
That's why we were all a little chuckling when you said
Right.
all of this, because
No,
all of
just
this
the
means.
first column, sorry,
So this is this year to be completed.
right.
I don't know what the term is. I don't know what mid-term is,
Yeah.
because I don't know the life of a term. So I would just say, like, 3 to 5 year projects. I think you just need to relabel this so we can
Sure.
all be on the same, excuse the pun, but page.
Right. Sure.
You know, there might be some dependencies on here. You might want to have some footnotes at the end where things are dependent and why and all that, and if
Right.
there's money issues, although I don't think that's it. The only thing I could do by looking at this list, and I'm not sure I can do it at this moment, is to say what I think is obvious, is really missing. But I did have a question even before coming here today. So I think you need to I mean, I think this is good. I just think you need to rejigger it a bit with staff and just say, you know, some of this you're just supposed to do. I mean, and they have to get done in 2019. If it were me, I would look at each of this and say, okay, so if HR is doing what HR is supposed to, what is HR? I'm not picking on you. It's just that why not, right?
Right.
Is what strategic stuff? Like, what's new? What are they working on for the future? I mean, this is just what they're supposed to do. Is that enough? Are we stretching ourselves? It would be nice to know if they're working on something that's, you know, out there or not. But it should be at least stated, because then their column on 3 to 5 years and this one, you know, it's sort of like it's all empty, the last column, except for one thing on top. So it sort of begs the question why there's even a column there if there's only one item. So I would look for some consistency in what you want from us. The strategic initiatives that we did during budget that were the 5 of us asking for what we want done. Where does that come into play in this laundry list of activities?
Well, those, after we decided what you wanted, those got disseminated to the different departments.
Okay. I actually don't even remember that we put any dollars in for marketing, because I remember asking for it.
We put a little bit.
And not doing, yeah, I don't know what that is. Okay. So the only thing I saw is the downtown fund, which is a fund that's housed, it's their
Right.
recommendation housed within. But I don't know if there are others that are, not everything has to be put on the list. There are many
Right.
things that are done that keep the lights going. You don't put that on here, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, but you might want to just revisit some of those, because I didn't actually see it in here based on my recollection, but I may be wrong about this.
So to understand you correctly, the midterm projects is what hasn't been done, and then the 2019 is what has to be done for the remainder of the year.
That's major and immediate projects that we're
Okay.
working on.
So what would also be helpful, just in general, is when you do your manager upstate, it's like if you can always come back to this.
That's exactly what I want to do.
Okay.
The idea.
That'd be helpful. So what is the Business Retention and Expansion Program?
That's an economic development program where you have somebody that goes and meets with all the different businesses.
Okay.
And what they do is they talk with them about any of the needs that they have. How many employees do they have? Are they having trouble finding employees? Are they going to be growing? Do they need any resources that we can connect them with the state to help them with for like purchasing equipment or, you know, whatever it is they need for an expansion. But it's a dedicated program where you actually go and meet one-on-one with everybody.
You document, don't you?
And you document, you write
That's
it down, you collect the data, but it gives you that one-on-one meeting with them, and they know who to reach out to if they need some help with any kind of economic development.
So this is a particular person that we've already budgeted for, because I know
Not
we have
budgeted.
not budgeted for this. Okay. So where did this initiative come from?
Oh, it's something that I did in my last city, the BRE. And that was
Okay.
last year when we talked about economic development, on our list was,
A person.
hiring a person to do the economic strategy, and we did not do that, and then hiring somebody that was also gonna do the BRE, and, you know, just a way to start to reach out to our businesses and say, okay, what's going on and what's happening, and what do we need to know about the market here?
Okay.
So that speaks to my point of consistency, because some things are business and some things are an idea. I would have actually thought you would have put that, maybe not long-term discussion, but a discussion, because it's an idea, but it's, I don't know if it needs a budget. I wouldn't have any clue, because as I
Well, you need
did a
somebody to
focus.
do it.
So It requires a budget.
So it requires a budget. So the
s-
very last page are things that a grant writer, we don't have a grant writer, we need a grant writer. Do we contract with somebody to do grant writing for us?
Sure.
I mean, we busted out a lot of grants last year.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
we have a lot coming up, and we really don't have the internal capacity to do them.
I would take it one step further. We've got a really long list of goals here. There is at least one big thing on our not this year that I would like to see this year, which is Route 9. And my feeling is, we don't want to hire more and more staff. We love our staff. We don't want to grow our staff more than necessary. But any project where we can hire a consultant and they can move something forward that we identify as a priority project, which is most of this stuff we would mostly agree with is priority. Like, we're hiring consultants to help move forward with the comprehensive plan. Everybody's happy about that. I know that you've been in contact with a potential consultant to help us move forward the RFQ process, if that's what we're gonna do. I'm totally supportive of that. I know that when we had the meeting with the DOT, we had somebody just come with us who is a traffic consultant who has worked with the DOT in the past, who has a connection to Awning. Let's move Route 9 discussions, and Paul's here if he wants to weigh in, but can we move facilitating a meeting that our Assemblywoman has offered to put together for us to this year and lean heavily on a consultant who can help us through that process? Because nothing's gonna get built this year or probably next year, even if we have this meeting. But right now, we're not even getting on their list. And Route 9 update has been talked about for 13 years, but it was one of the top priorities of the DRWC, and it's gonna come up again in the comp plan, and we already know it. It's terrible the way it is. We know it needs to be better. I would rather hire somebody to help us facilitate that now, because, you know, Paul and Andy are building buildings and water treatment facilities and stuff, and
Right.
there's a traffic guy that can help us with that. So my feeling is,
Okay.
if there's a consultant who can help us move something forward, that's a short-term investment of getting some expertise to help us move forward these projects. Whether that's a grant writer, or somebody, you know, an RFQ writer, or a specialist in traffic consultant, and I just got an
Nodding
agreed over
because-
here, and, okay.
I agree.
All right, so that's like the third. I mean,
Right,
I didn't
right.
have any except things we already talked about.
So if there anything that is redundant, and I'll tell you what I might consider something that's redundant, completing the installation, like your 2018 drop list, since you're already heading in the new direction, that's already kind of been specified within your, under finance.
at?
This is the last page.
Looking at the drop list.
Yeah.
And where is that?
Oh, the items dropped?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's already been indicated in finance, because you just told us that you were gonna,
Go to a
yeah,
different system.
go to a different system.
Aren't you just summarizing there, though?
Right, I was just summarizing, because I had actually gotten a call from trustee Casada saying, you know, what was left over from 17. So the 17 projects are in italics, that are now in 18 or beyond, and these are the ones that came off.
So with respect to the economic strategy, are you looking for that to be a part of the comprehensive plan for sure?
Yes.
Okay. All right, okay. And how will that, how are you
Because there
gonna?
should be a section on economic development.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not going to prioritize this list or operations or all of it, but I have been trying to brainstorm, you know, what's been up for discussion for quite some time now. And once we tabled the 200 Main Street conversation, I really had to step back and just take that particular project, just put it to the side just for a second, and realize that we're not even taking that property into consideration when it comes to all village-owned parcels and how it should be. So I would just encompass that whole property and put it into the parcel conversation.
Which is
in-
happening next.
Right, right. And any potential development and/or potential RFQ, RFP process that gets continued, whether the ones that were started or invested in the past in certain parcels in downtown, or the ones prospectively on Water Street with RFQ, really take into account the top like 6 that really can be built on, and that way we're not always leaving out projects. And I'm going to just save the rest for our parcel conversation, but because that way, that particular project, which is not that far away from the other parcels, can be included into a comprehensive parcel conversation, and doesn't have to be a midterm project because we're discussing parcels now. So that's just a way to kind of include it all. This part is more of a statement, so part of the policy body, which I think is challenging for those who work in government that are not policymakers, this is just anywhere, is how to just implement the new additions that just come month by month from the board, right? So I still don't really know the village's role in how we're going to be implementing or educating when it comes to our leaf blower, ban and regulations, right? When those go into effect, the enforcement mechanisms, how it's going to affect police, education, right? ETPA now has a whole local bureaucratic system, right? So, and I asked you last time what that's going to do to our staff and all our departments, and how that has to be procured now at the local level, and how that's going to impact staff. Neat Streets campaign, that's going to impact staff, because even the council said this relies mainly on the building department in your office to make sure that education is done and follow-ups and one-on-one. So, and by the way, I understand why that has to be done, but and I'm pretty sure, I can't speak for my colleagues, but the remainder of the year, we're not going to stop looking into prospective legislation or the passage of prospective policy, whether it costs money or time or whatever it is, because not everything we pass is a huge capital project. But it's just something I just wanted to share, because those are three big ones that we kind of have spent a lot of time and money and discussion on. So yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. And and then this is just also more of a statement. Where exactly are we on the review of the firehouse locations as far as long term, right? So do we have an update conversation this year? I'm not saying it has to be done this year.
Right.
It could be that we're not at that stage, and I get it. That's a hard thing to discuss, right?
Well, Debbie's been having conversations with the chiefs about
chiefs, yeah.
what are potential scenarios, and I'm sure it would be valuable to have an update at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then my last point is fire and police. I'm kind of having this type of non-personnel related breakdown update from those two departments and their leadership. Or, because I know that you could only speak for the, technically the fire, right? And
Right.
police will speak for police, but,
And fire's in here.
Yeah,
They're two big
okay.
projects.
right, but also for the public and the board can kind of really go into depth of what the conversations have been regarding the firehouse locations, right? And what happens if we actually do sell a village-owned building, all right? Because that then gets put into the village parcel conversation, right? So it just, that's all. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
You got some notes there, did you want to speak?
Nope. No, not for me.
So I'm not going to repeat what the rest of my colleagues said, which I agree 100% with that. I think more like a graphic is very helpful just to understand the process and the timelines and the overlaps of different projects that have gone through the years that we've been working, or the staff has been working through that process. And not only that, but at some point, you said that you were going to work on that, and it's important because we are elected officials and we do represent the village of Austin. I would like to share that document because I think it's fair enough for the rest of the community to know what we're doing and how we're doing in relation
Absolutely.
to these projects. So if we don't have that,
Right.
they still, no matter we have this list or we have a laundry list, like it was called, it doesn't mean anything because they said, but you've been working on that since 2017 or 2018, so, but we can give them a time frame that, no, this is done this, and this is done that. This is the reasons why we're doing this now. So there's a process, sure. Few of the projects that I have concern in here, one of them started over 10 years ago, and kind of started in 2017 again, some of my colleagues may know where I'm going, is the Operations Center upgrade. We're in March, nothing has happened. I haven't heard anything. Yes. One of the things I want to bring that up in here, and I was said something before with a previous project, and maybe Stuart can help me with this, is I think any contract that the village enters with any entity, engineer firm, architectural firm, consultant firm, because of the amount of money that we pay, I think we should own all the documents and everything that has done. In 2012, when we did the study for the parcels downtown, the parking lot area, I have requested that being specific, any document, any CAD file be part of what we own after the project is done. So if you haven't signed or you are updating the contract with the architectural firm that is working for the operations center, my request is
We'll make sure of that.
that is part of the contract. Just like we ask, again, and this is at least the time, for the time being, I don't know if the rest of the board feels the same way, but if we're paying $100,000 or even $50,000, I think we should have all those documents.
Sure, I
If we
agree.
want to do something else, if we want to do an upgrade, we have the documents.
Right.
If we want to use a different firm, a different company, a different consultant, we have the documents, and sometimes that is a little bit less than that. The other concern that I have on sort of the list is obviously the timing. Sure, timing is everything sometimes. So you have it in HR portion, and maybe you can give us an update at some other time, but the contract and what is going on with the negotiation. CSCA, we have an extension, is up this year. We have the TVA that's coming up pretty much.
Right.
I'm not sure if any of those communications have started yet. But again, you said your budget part starts in August, sure, so we're in March. How is that gonna affect our budget? And that's something that we go by, sure, when we start looking at budget numbers. So we need to know where we stand in two big contracts that we're coming up in here. And I'm not gonna go into all the details in here, since some of my colleagues already went to, but that's part of the legal part, so sorry, Stuart. IMAs, town. What is going on with that? How do we advancing on any of those things at this point? I know there was a list. I know some of them were expired. Some of them we are working on it, modifying. You know, because that also affects our budget. That also affects.
Right.
To me, those are major things because now we are working in a different scenario. Not just that's not a day-to-day thing. That affects decisions that this board makes
Sure.
in relationship to other entities. And how do we do that? And I'm just gonna leave it like that. I have a couple other stuff in here, but I don't think it's just not the timing, I guess. I think we need a whole meeting for half of this list.
Well, I just want, I think, I don't have a problem with it being a laundry list, I understand, but I guess we all kind of look at things differently. You know, I'm sure if you create a chart with the percentage completed, that will be, you know, helpful to a lot of people, but I think there's, you know, the value to this list and helping us have this conversation and identify, you know, like, I didn't realize that in your mind, we're putting off, that you and Paula decided we were putting off Route 9 until next year, because I don't support that decision, so
we can move it
I need to
back.
better understand why, if it's really not possible for this year, I need to better understand why, or is there some way that we can provide you with additional resources to
Sure.
keep that a 2019 priority? And one thing that I'm not seeing on here, and you know, I think it's really valuable for us to identify, these are the things we want to see you and the staff be able to accomplish in 2019, and to minimize the number of times that you need to come back to us for permission to hire whatever resources you need to make that happen. And I'm not sure if we have a consistent practice of how that's done. What I don't see on here is marketing and PR. That's something that's been in the budget, and I think we've probably made a bigger deal about that than we need to. I know we're, you know, contracting with something specifically for the comp plan, but the reality is we face challenges in messaging all the time. So whether it's doing outreach for a particular initiative that's changing, or just the village's ability to respond appropriately to something that comes at us that, you know, is just damage control. You have been given the authority to go forth and find somebody, and if there's something more that needs to be done, I don't want you to have to come back to us for permission to fulfill. Like, we don't need to micromanage every decision you make about a consultant who you have, you know, believe you're going to pay a reasonable rate to, and they're going to do a good job. If you have a recommendation, I want us to, you know, green light that so that you can move forward if we've all agreed on the goal. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Great.
I have a question, and please tell me if it's not appropriate for this.
Okay.
You know, because it really just came to me. So clearly, our awesome, very competent department heads are very busy, not just with operations, but implementing capital projects and policy on an ongoing basis. At what point does IMAs and their work on non-village projects be considered in workload and capacity, right? So we have the town, water and main, McCarthy, Stormy Town, Cortland Dam Road. So at what time, you know, at what point does valuable staff time that's being pulled away from the village be taken into consideration? Is it an IMA contractual meeting conversation? Is that an analysis of?
Probably.
I'm asking because I just don't know.
Yeah, I think that probably is its own conversation. Because, I mean, I never think that the town roads are as important as anything that I want done in the village, but.
I just have a request. I see that Marilyn Gerardo is doing her 5-year plan for HUD.
Yes.
It'd be great if she could, I know she's, over the years, she has mentioned it. It'd be great if she could just come back to the board and just remind us what that is. And
On a schedule, so you'll see her in May, you'll see her in June, you'll see her in July.
Okay.
And then it'll be effective in September, so you'll see her again in September. She is gonna be bringing you the draft plan, though, and going through all of that in May.
great. And I'll also be
She
curious.
apologizes for not being here, but she's not feeling well.
Okay. And I'll also be curious to if our regional, if New York State regional, like HUD regional, have any comments with respects to the proposed budget cuts that has been proposed by this administration, because I think that probably would have a huge effect on her 5-year plan.
Thank you.
I do need to walk back one of my statements, because the town roads that are listed here, that's not paving projects, that's water main projects.
Water main.
So that's relevant to us. It's a weird relationship that we have with the town when it's the water mains in the town, but it's still our water system. So it is appropriate, and I probably was a little too judgmental.
Oh, you know, I wasn't even trying
No,
to.
no, no, I'm identifying my own overstatement of that. I'll be a little more generous, and now that I look more carefully now this phrase here.
I worked it.
Well, I really appreciate the feedback that you're giving me. We'll make some adjustments so that this makes more sense for the public. We will do the timelines, again, charts that I did last year, but I wanted to go over the projects here, make you aware of all the different things that each of the different departments are working on, because some of these are routine, you know, business as usual, but some of them are big projects that we've never done before. And so being able to separate those out and say, this is what we normally do, and this is a lot of work, but these are, you know, this is taking extra time and extra effort on the staff's part. They're amazing people, and they get a lot of work done, and it's been a joy to work with them. So I thank all of them for being here, and I thank you for your feedback, because they are really busy, and I think that this community is blessed to have them here. So thank you for your feedback on
you.
this.
All right. Does the
Choir want to sing? All right, thank you.
Okay, do we need a break, or can we move right on to inviting Tracey out?
I'm going to use the restroom.
Okay, all right, let's make it quick.
Are we all set?
Are we all ready? All right, welcome back. Welcome to the table, Tracey Corbitt.
Yep, so I just want to cue this up. When we talked last time about perhaps entering into an agreement to look at an RFQ for the DPW site. There was conversation by the board saying, what are all the rest of the sites? And so Tracey has put together a list of those sites, and really the developable ones, because there are some little nitpicky things here and there, but nothing that's of great concern, and we can come back to you in another time and say, we recommend that you liquidate this asset to the next door neighbor or whatever. But these are the larger, potentially developable sites. So I'm going to turn it over to Tracey, but I'm hoping at the end of this conversation we can make a decision on moving forward with an RFQ, RFP process for something for affordable housing. So Tracey, thank you.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Omar, if you don't mind now, thank you. Dia slides.
Ahead.
That's
Because I was
okay.
playing with the mouse.
Oh,
I might have to go back.
that's okay. Do you want me to do it real quick and zip it?
No, it's all right.
Yeah, you did.
There we go.
Can everyone see? If not, I'll turn off
See,
another
I'm
set of lights.
Totally
All right.
woken up.
There you go.
Okey doke. So, thanks to our GIS, we have a new window onto what we own and be able to do some really good analysis on actually all property, but right now the map on the right shows village-owned parcels. These are ones that came through analysis of our tax assessor data. So these are ones that are labeled that the Village of Awning is the owner. There might be one that's still labeled as the Awning Urban Renewal Agency. So, and this is kind of a breakdown of those, pretty simplified, to vacant land use code, parking lots, parks and recreation, government buildings in operation, water supply, and land underwater. There are multiple properties that are underwater along the Hudson River. So the government buildings could be like what we're in. It's the operations center. This actually includes 200 Main Street because it is a building. The rec center, though, is listed as a park under our assessor's code. I haven't really gone to really refine these and you'll see some places like up in Crawbucky, one of the parcels is still listed as vacant land. And some of these, even though they're listed as vacant, I actually didn't do deed research to see if they really are not, have a restricted use on them, if there's some underground utility. Some of that work would have to be done. This is just really a first flush of looking at our properties. So there's about 36 vacant properties and totaling 13 acres. We have, and this isn't the number of parking lots, these are the number of parcels that add up to parking lots. Many of our parking lots are an assemblage of multiple parcels. So we have about 5 acres of parking lots. We have about 85 acres of parks, buildings and operations, 10 acres, and water supply, which is probably where our water towers are, and a lot of land underwater. So I want to first just concentrate on the land that's in the village center and the waterfront. This was a lot of the parcels that came about through urban renewal, and this includes the buildings in this area is 16 Croton Ave, the building that we're in, the village hall, the police station, fire station, and DPW yards, and this is 200 Main Street. So I'm going to continue to zoom in as we go in. So, and as part of this, because the parcels are multiple parcels, like around Market Square, some of these are, this number 4 here might be 6 parcels. For analysis, I combined them so that we can know the total assemblage of those, of the acreage. So this chart that I created, this is for the 12 parcels that went in assemblage. The smallest one is 0.22 acres. And this is almost what's somewhat of buildable lots based on our current zoning. So the chart that goes across, the parcel number is just one I assigned for my use here. The uses, most of them are parking lots. Some of them, the parking lots actually have, like Market Square has a public assembly area. Then we have DPW storage yards. And as you go across the site constraints, these are things that I evaluated that if we were to redevelop, what would be sacrificed. Most of it's parking displacement. What would we do with the parking if we were to build something on that lot, or DPW displacement? And then some of the site constraints that, as I was looking at them, what were some of the opportunities of being close to the train station? So then it goes by zoning, the number of stories that actually could build there. I have the zoning districts. So I want to be very specific about the dwelling unit maximum. This is the potential units with no consideration of any site constraints, setbacks. This is just doing a straight calculation. The only one I couldn't do it would be for the SPN district because the zoning didn't have like a direct acreage density calculation. And then I just did the proximity to the railroad station because that's really important for transit-oriented development. So one thing, when you're looking at like the affordable housing projects, I believe the minimum number they have is 48 units. Am I correct about that, Debbie?
I think so.
I think it's 48. So some of the assemblings of some of the parcels, we can get up to that number. But if you can't make that 48 without any site constraints, that site's probably not good for affordable housing development. So now we're going to drill down even further to look at some of these potential location sites. This is, I believe, is what has been known as the Market Square area, which is 1.83 acres. And as you can see, it's mainly parking areas. This aerial photo is older. The parking has been reconfigured on the parcel to the left. And this, can I do it? Yeah. This right here is the old Croton Aqueduct. And this is actually a piece of parcel that is village land. There is also the kind of like an entry ramp, like a loading dock area for this building over here. And this is the Market Square area, which, and this is, as we all know, is used for the farmer's market. And then there's just some, I'm not quite sure of the agreements here, but with the post office and the parking. So here's thanks to the county, this is the new aerial bird's eye viewing program that the county has provided us with. So this actually shows you the current layout of the parking on the site to the left. So Leonard Street parking, I don't know if this is really the name of it, but Leonard Street was back there. So this is behind Main Street and the two parking lots. I did not include the rec center parking in this analysis because that is so tied to the rec center. So for this, I really focused on these two as a potential development site. And there's a total of 1.76 acres. This is parking. Some of this is dedicated parking for businesses. There are the corrals of dumpsters that are used for the buildings here on Main Street. There's also a loading dock for these buildings. And it's also split by the old Croton Aqueduct, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. So this is the train station lot this is the train station right here. And it's kind of like the northeast of the train station. The acreage could have been increased if I included this street that has really been covered with parking, this end of Main Street. It just wasn't a part of the parcels. So it would probably tally, you know, a little bit over 2 acres here. So, I didn't have any flood zone maps for up in the village center because there aren't any. So, but when we get down here by the river, we have the issue of the 100 and 500 year flood zone. And you can see this site is definitely impacted by that. So construction here there'd be limitations that you wouldn't have any living dwelling units within that. You'd either have to raise it or it could be parking below. So there are ways to build here. It's just that you might have, it'd be different. There wouldn't be any on the first floor. So here's give you a little better proximity of knowing where this is in relation to the river, being right next to the train station. But once again, this is all train station parking that would be displaced. So on the corner of Broadway and Water Street is a decommissioned wastewater treatment site. And I'm not quite exactly sure of the year that was done, but it's about 1 acre. It's currently used for DPW for storage of looks like yard materials, gravel, whatever. So this particular site is also within the 100 and 500 year flood zone. But as you can see, there's another one that is very close to the Hudson River and walkable to the train station. So the Westerly Road, which did go into meet the acreages, but this is, one thing is this is also used as a road that is used to access the wastewater treatment plant, the park, and Sing Sing Correctional Facility. So this road, which actually continues north underneath Secor Road overpass, but also dimensionally, this long, narrow lot would be an additional constraint for potential development. And this one is wholly within the 100-year and 500-year flood zones. So you already saw some of these sites, but I just wanted to go back over them. The DPW sites, and I have an additional image. It's a 3.23 acre site. It is divided by the Sing Sing Kill, and it is a assemblage of 6 parcels. Here's what it looks actually today, where the buildings were moved, and this is used for DPW, yard and storage, transfer. This building is still here. And as you can see, it has steep slopes surrounding it. This is rock ledge and should be buildable, but this is also to its advantage because it does make the connection up from Main Street, a potential connection from the riverfront, which would be down here, up to Main Street if there was some sort of steps, elevators, or escalators, something to help people get up this steep slope. This does have a little bit of an issue of flood zones, 100 and 500, surrounding Sing Sing Kill. So now to move out of the village center, the parcels get smaller, but there are some that could potentially be used for housing. One is Flavel's Place. It is listed as vacant land, although there is a basketball court located here in the corner. It's 2.8 acres of land. There is, I think this is still Sing Sing Kill that goes through it, and there are steep slopes. It's in an S75 zoning district. As you can see here, this is both shows contours, and there are some flood areas here along Sing Sing Kill, and there are some areas that are fairly reasonable up here. This is this steep slope here where you can see it's a little darker shade. So there are potentials for housing, park, or something. Right now it's woods. I didn't do any research about the historic use of this property, how it came about to be village land, or if it was a conservation area, but right now, our assessor just lists this as vacant land. This is the basketball court as seen from the street, so it's not a full-scale basketball court. It is a paved area. It's probably about the equivalent of a half court.
Who owns it? Like, we don't really maintain that, right? So
I don't know.
We've been paying someone to maintain that thing. Saying budget cuts, right? I'll ask.
I don't know if it's part of our park system or it maybe
just did it.
we could have acquired it, the property with this basketball court on it. I didn't really do that, but we can do more research on this because there isn't parking or anything here. There's just this half a court. So this is an interesting property off of Lafayette Street. It used to be combined with this. This used to actually be 2 parcels here where this house is. And this house was sold off, I think, in the 1990s, and it's a Habitat for Humanity house that was constructed. This property was bought by the village to use as a dump. And I'm not quite sure if it was a stump dump or like, organic materials.
So that's hollow hose.
This is
So
hollow
everything
hose.
behind
Yeah,
it.
this is hollow hose. So it's adjacent to Sing Sing. There is a fence, a door to a gate to go in through the Sing Sing property. This is Hudson Street, which is a street you can drive on, but I'm not sure what type of easement, any of that we've done looking into that. So
It's really steep.
it's very steep. There is a flat area here. There's actually a flat area here. And there's kind of actually a drive that there is access here. I talked to Joe Augustinelli, and he thinks there might be a gate here. I didn't actually go out there and look at it, that people can access, and this is actually a flat area. But then there's a gate down here, and there is some flat area here. I'm not sure, but this is a,
I just don't see it as a potential lot. I mean, I'm down the
No.
street literally from that property, and it's just.
it's just something to think for other, maybe not for housing, but it might be useful for something else.
Well, it's 1.36 acres in total. That's nothing. I mean, if you, because the way they do, no, because the way you do the gradation, it counts. It's like a roller. So 1.3, when you have that kind of steepness, it's not very much.
This calculation might actually just be by the square. It might not be on the roll.
Okay.
If they're using this program that I used. I mean, there just might be ways if
All right.
it might
whatever.
solve other problems. These houses don't have parking, you know, it's just something to think that this is in our land bank. Or is this something to, you know, negotiate with the state?
Yeah, off-street parking for Spring Street and State.
State, definitely. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how we could get in there, but, you know,
Well, there's, if you look at, if you go to.
No, I see with the arrow point, but I've
No,
also
no, no.
passed by there.
But this part right here, there's a driveway, there is an access in there for this, there could be something in there.
right.
I don't know,
It's,
but I think it's very difficult, definitely, just visualizing. I mean, like I said, I'm around the corner from there, so I don't know.
it's just something that we should, it's in our
Okay.
It's in our portfolio of properties, and whatever it's used in the future is a potential leverage with the state. Who knows? The state might want it as additional land.
So you're just looking at land and you say, oh, it's potential for development. Actually, any housing. It doesn't have to be affordable or mixed. It's any housing. But then starts can a fire truck get into this little
Right.
piece of land if you build something where humans are living in versus parking, for example, although they probably have to get into that too. So you're not looking at that. You're simply saying it's land.
Yeah, once we started going through this review, I mean, you're probably for the RFP, you're really concentrating on the other ones, but I wanted to just show you
Well, we have.
some of what you have, because this is the actual property from the bird's eye view, and you can see kind of the paving here, and you can kind of see the driveway that comes into this here along here. So, and you can see that these house parcels here do not really have any driveways access for parking. I'm not sure how. Yeah, there's definitely a lower section to this that's not probably really feasible for using in association with Springer State Street. So this is on Acker Avenue, and there's a trail there. You know, it might be good as a pocket park, but this is actually a buildable lot or appears to be a buildable lot. It didn't look like, or it could have been maybe a paper street at one time that was combined. We could actually do some more history. And it does. This is the dimensions for this. This didn't include this because that one would not meet the minimum requirements, but this one possibly would. So I don't know about any utilities in the area, but right now it's an informal unpaved, but it's maintained and mowed as a green space. And the contours are not unreasonable on this property either.
It's just difficult. It's just when you drive up from Highland.
Yeah, but at that curve.
But at the curve, it's just difficult to.
I always found that weird, the way that.
It might be just to be maybe more formal park. It could be an opportunity for a park formalized and dedicated to that at some point in time. Or
I just want to add, we kind of already alluded to like the properties that could actually be worth us looking into actually investing or getting, a developer. But any of these properties, if allowed within our zoning, can be reconfigured. A lot of the new projects that we've gotten are really any project. They've had to reconfigure streets and intersections, and so just to keep that in mind.
right, yeah, they could be used for that in the future. Sometimes a lot of these, something this size would probably go for like an affordable housing project for home ownership, building a one-family house that would be through Habitat or something like that. That's about all this would be probably potential for. But still, in all, we get something possible. or a park, whatever the needs are. I think you might find going through the comprehensive plan process might be a good exercise, is to look at some of these and what are the needs, and if there are lacking of park facilities in this area, it's something we can do. So this is another one that's at the end of Fairview Place. This is a pretty steep slope. This is Revolutionary Road right here, and it's at a dead end. Probably should have been a more formalized dead end. It is a 14,000 square foot lot, and the zoning there is 5,000. But it is a fairly steep slope. There are some other houses built on the slopes there. It is just something that exists. It looks like it might have been a part of the road, or I'm not quite sure. Once again, didn't do the history research on that.
Is that the property where the guy cut down all our trees? No.
No, that's coming.
But, okay.
I'm getting there.
No, because that's near those.
There we go.
I knew we were in the area.
Yeah.
It's Florida, so.
There you go. There you go.
There's Rockledge up there, you see, and, yeah.
This is down in Scarborough, next to Scarborough Park. It's a 10,000 square foot lot, or actually almost 11. The zoning is 5,000 square foot, and it's actually a pretty level, flat lot. It doesn't appear to be. It wasn't dedicated parkland, huh?
It's level now.
It's level now. There are no trees on it. Yes. Yeah. So that was the last of the ones that I thought were even good for even a single family home as part of the review.
Although there's an entrance there, right, for Metro North, I thought, no?
No. No, this.
This one, that fence had like one of these.
Oh, there could be an like.
It's a gate right at the corner, yeah.
There could be. I mean, there. At one time, I think there was a connection to the jetty out into the river here. There used to be at one time, and there used to be a wastewater treatment plant just north of here. I think
You're
up
telling
here.
me that piece of land is about the size of the piece of land to the right of it, where the house is?
Yes. Right, and under zoning, you could possibly subdivide that into 2 houses.
That's a pretty steep little.
Well, this is flat. No, that's a flat piece right there.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I used to live right over here.
It's
I used to-
flat, but then it goes whoop down to the railroad.
No, this is
It's everything flat.
this is flat. You can look at these
Literally,
contours.
it's the same level. Tracks in that line. It's really at the same level.
Yeah, this is this. It's pushed way back up here. This is a pretty flat area. I actually used to live over at Liberty Knoll for 2 years, so I used to walk down here all the time.
All right.
Years ago. So this is a quick overview of some of the parcels. You know, as I said, things need to really have a deeper dive about, you know, into if you really want to look at a property.
But what happened to the firehouses that we own? I mean, where does that come in? Because you
We just
said
did vacant
fire-
parcels, we didn't do the
I
buildings.
I really
I'm sorry?
focused on vacant parcels and parking.
This is all just vacant.
Yeah, I kind of.
It's like 200 Main.
I might have missed saying that. I didn't really go into the buildings,
No, no.
and
you're right.
dove into all the vacant because that's kind of the low hanging fruit.
You're right. You said vacant. Sorry.
Yeah, and the parking lots, but the parking lots with the constraint of parking, and what do you do with the, you know,
Yes.
To make
it's
up for it,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, so, right, that makes it a challenge.
Okay.
I don't. Does anyone see any?
That was a great presentation.
Very.
Well, you sent this to us, yes?
Yes, we got a draft
I sent
version,
the
and now
draft.
it's online.
So they could kind of pre-think about what they were.
Yeah, there was. I just
Some new stuff.
updated this at 4:30, so 4:30 was the last version. 4:36, as Jamie said.
I did not notice the difference
I
between the
noticed it
earlier
was
version, but okay.
Well,
I think there's an extra slide, actually. 2 extra slides.
I,
Yeah, there were some extra ones here, and there was a couple taken out.
yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So thoughts. So it'd be helpful to know what the board's thinking now that you've seen some of the vacant parcels that we have. You know, are we ready to move forward and see if we can get some development on some of those? You know, what was your reaction to seeing the lots that we have?
Just from our previous conversation, I thought at least, with respect to the RFQ and the DPW site, I thought there was enough consensus on the board to move forward. So, on that piece of property, yeah. I mean,
Because we think we'll have success there, and that'll give us more opportunities with some of these others.
yeah. I mean, I still share that belief.
Okay.
but it was definitely helpful to see all the other available plots, even particularly even with Market Square, because I've never seen, I think, and in visualizing, I've never thought about that the actual piece that abuts.
Maple?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that too.
Yeah,
And
right,
it
right.
opens up so many parking
Right.
options. I don't know why I never was aware of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I was thinking parking, but
Well, access for cars to be able to.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but
I
it's,
Well, it
It's an
doesn't go to
access
the-
point
Yeah.
for parking, for, anyway.
yeah.
No.
But it
a
was
big deal, I think.
like I said, it was.
You need one
Yeah,
point of
I
entry
don't know how
on
wide it was.
the main side.
But it was definitely helpful to see a series of the lots and how much acreage there is. Not even taking into consideration, like we didn't even talk about parking lots and well, some parking lots, but like not the rest of them. So it was definitely a helpful presentation. I appreciate it.
Something's happening.
I am, because you were the one that asked for this,
Yeah.
so.
No. This is great because, I mean, even if we weren't having a conversation about the DPW lot, something that we've kind of been addressing and discussing sporadically, just with different projects and stuff. So it's great to finally see it and for the public to actually see what they own, what's realistic, what's not realistic, what's in their backyard. I am very supportive, especially because of the possibility that it's an affordable housing project, potentially at the DPW site, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest site that we have.
3.23 acres. Yeah.
Market
So-
Square's pretty big too.
so-
Put them all together.
The one that's not in use.
Right. Yeah.
Or fully, I shouldn't say, Paul would probably say it is a little bit in
So
use. But
that's definitely, I mean, I'm going to be supportive of that no matter what because of our need. And we don't really have to have a discussion about need because that's something we actually know that we have, right? I guess my concern really is one thing that past administrations and taxpayers have paid for between so much staff time and dollars is just the analysis of the downtown lots and how much discussion and how much the mayor has done and I have done, even when we first started, even before that, Mayor Hanauer. And regardless of whether that was done right or wrong, there was some valuable studies that came out of those conversations. We even paid money to see what developers could build or would build there. And because it's the center, I was always under the understanding that it made more sense to follow through with something you've already spent so much time and money on first. Before going to other stuff, I kind of feel rushed to go into DPW after one meeting, but I mean that's not really a relevant thing because the board wants to move forward, and I'll be supportive of that because of what it is. But given the question mark at 200 Main, whether it even stays put as a building as a structure, given the two lots at Market Square, it's 2 lots or
It's
four,
actually
four
four
lots,
altogether,
right?
right?
Because it's
But one of them's like a triangle.
yeah,
However
there are a
we-
bunch of little ones.
and because we did so much, input seeking the past 5 years about what people feel about those lots and what they want to, I just feel like we're just putting all to the side just because we have someone coming in saying we have an idea, which is a good idea, but that's just the only part where I'm a little concerned. Not to say, because I don't want to speak for the board, that we're not going to be addressing those lots. I guess I just don't agree with the priority of them.
I think one of the big things is the displacement of parking. And that if we did something at the DPW lot, there might be the opportunity to build enough parking so that you could actually decommission a lot without impacting the total number of spaces available. So there might be an opportunity there to, start that domino effect that then we can
But
build.
part of the studies of the past 6 years did incorporate parking structures or the parking lots behind open door,
Right.
behind
But
Grand Drift,
you-
behind.
To do the construction, you'd have to eliminate them first. So if
Right, agreed.
where would they go temporarily? And yeah, eventually you'll get there, but by building first at the DPW site, that allow you to build maybe capacity to decommission that with move those people into the garage at the DPW site.
The people that currently park at the downtown lots.
It's possible you could have some lots, people that they're close. It might not be the exact ripple
Yeah.
effect, but if there are some parking that are up at the top, I don't know, this is creativity.
I guess my
Can we
point
get a
is-
garage that you can
Right.
park and get in and walk in from
I
that
guess my
end?
point was, because so much time, money, and effort,
Right.
staff, elected, studies, taxpayer dollars, wouldn't we continue the, not just the study, but really the how-to next
Mhm.
on all those properties?
Right.
How to deal with the displacement of parking and the interruption of a downtown, business and professional district. Because even at DPW, you have major businesses that had just moved in there that have major traffic every day, they're pretty big employers. You have the storage company, you have Mirage Glass that just moved, you have you have a lot of people there. So it's not the same because they don't necessarily have that much use that much parking. But what I'm saying is that I don't think it's a fair analysis to really or statement to say that it's always a concern what disturbance we're going to have anywhere in the village when it comes to access to either sidewalks or roads. But and even if we still said that, yeah, DPW makes sense because of this and we move forward, I still want to move forward with the conversation as to how to address those disturbances in all those lots on Main Street.
Sure.
And because right now, what has been changing, not just through businesses, is what you would call the heart of downtown, right? The Gateway, right? And then Gateway all the way down, right? Used to be Zumba Studio, Liz Fitness, now it's Village Deli, right? Your main, what you call the main part of Main Street, and you go to Lower Main Street, right? So I just see us pausing on that when there's been so much focus on those other lots.
What do you think has been the cause of it not moving forward?
Combination of a lot of staff.
Is it the parking
Money,
issue? Like, what is it? Do we
I
need
don't-
to study the parking, like a parking displacement study to move forward?
Well, no, I mean, that's kind of what I'm asking you.
I think that's a big stumbling block. I mean, from
maybe
many-
that was a mistake for us.
I mean, some of it, the low-hanging fruit is to develop on a nice flat site that was already prepared by urban renewal. But the big puzzle is the parking issue and the constant need for parking. I would be leery about what would be the impact of eliminating those, even if it was like temporary for 8 months, where that's a huge hole. And I don't know if it would be too far. We can investigate it more. Is it too far if there was somehow a garage that you could access at the top of the DPW site and you could walk from the top of the DPW site in? Could some people, while we decommissioned a different lot, walk from there to their place of business? I don't know. It would require some more thought. Would that work?
That's just my point. I mean, because I know that we're going to move forward with DPW a lot. I just don't want to let all that work and time and effort and taxpayer dollars just put to the side until we have like the project that's supposed to save all projects when it comes to village lots. I'm excited for the project because of the need and because that area is finally going to be cleaned up, and if we can take it and put it back on our tax rolls,
Yeah.
I'm happy for that.
Absolutely. And I do think it's a domino effect. Like if we could even do it down there, it'll probably be easier to build a garage. If you did a garage at the DPW site, the next would be to hit that lot that was just northeast of the train station. That's TOD right on top of the train station parking. But if you could absorb that into the DPW site, that could open up another area for development right next to the train station, which would be terrific for people to get back and forth to work. Most
So I
likely.
know, but now you're expanding. What I'm saying is,
It's
the
just
ones that we've already studied and
Right.
focused on.
I do think
just trying to
it's,
get some
but
consistency.
you get one, then it could be a ripple effect. So you need that initial one, I think, to maybe create parking so that another one can be decommissioned.
I want to just speak to this point about Market Square versus DPW because I share your position generally, and that has always been what I've said is that we should do Market Square first, not for exactly the same reasons that you articulated, but largely because it's such a high-profile location that any success that we have there, we can leverage that so tremendously for any other potential ventures that we undertake. I do understand the reasons why we've come to the position of wanting to move forward with the DPW site. for a lot of what I'm sorry, what Tracey is saying about it's a complicated site. I mean, you're focusing on the parking. I think there's a little more basic human nature at play. That site has a lot of baggage that comes with it. It's urban renewal was something that was undertaken in our community at, I'm sorry, Market Square?
Oh, no. DPW.
No, I'm talking about Market Square. Because it became what it is as a result of urban renewal. It was done at the very tail end of the urban renewal era, which is why we have parking lots instead of really ugly big concrete buildings that would have been built there if federal government hadn't run out of money. And I think it's just really hard for the community to get behind a new vision of what can be there because it's so high profile. And so I am coming to understand not only is the DPW site where we will probably be moving forward with for an RFQ at this point because it's where developers have particularly expressed interest. So we have interest in a spot where we think that people are going to want to invest in something that we all believe is a good concept for our community. But it's also so much less high profile that it's someplace where we can, as a community, have success in transforming a public parcel into something very different that it never has been before. And I don't know the last time that we did that. We have way too many properties. You didn't even go into things that weren't vacant right now. We don't want to be in the real estate business. This would be a first big step to us turning publicly owned land into a tax generating economic development catalyzing property. And if we think we can have success there, and that seems to be the sense that we're getting from the folks that we brought in to meet with us a couple of weeks ago, that's why I'm behind it, even though I have, for every year that I've been in mayor in the village of Awning, I have been advocating the same course that you're advocating. No, I know, but I'm telling you that I completely agree with you. But I have bought into this idea of starting with DPW. And then I have other comments, but I just want to chime in on that topic. Who else?
I was gonna. You said something maybe that just triggered something,
Okay.
but Stuart, if we do a RFQ and we do build something, are we? I just have a question about the deed in perpetuity. Are we actually ever really giving up this property, or are we? So when she started
there's
talking
an
about,
option.
Legal structure so we can preserve affordability,
exactly,
yes.
exactly. So I just wanted to be clear because when she started talking about
Yes.
taxes, it just triggered.
We could still make
Well, it's an option. You go either way, right?
we
that
still,
was-
we still get tax dollars.
Okay.
Regardless of what path we take,
Okay.
right?
Right, but I think the folks who were here last time said there were a variety of
Yeah.
methods by which
Could
you
do either way.
deed transfer, you could hold the deed,
Yeah.
and you could still own the property. So there's a variety of ways that could be done that the village would still be able to generate revenue from.
Oh, by the way, Maria Kalidas from the state from HCR that was here, she's watching our meeting and will be following up with us tomorrow because she's very interested to hear what we have to say.
Okay.
She actually was thinking of coming, and Debbie said you might want to lower expectations. So I reached out to her and said, well, it's going to be pretty late. It's a big meeting. And she said, okay, well, I'll watch it online. So maybe she's watching us right now. And then she'll follow up with us tomorrow, perhaps even coming up to Austin to take a look.
I'm in support of taking the what we call the DPW site on doing an RFQ. So
Thank you for your concise comments.
Tracey, thank you so much. It's actually, I done the GIS and I put type Austin and see a bunch of properties, but actually having a the graphics and the images and see actually how they look, so it's definitely helpful. Agree with Rika. We should definitely do that. DPW, I think, is more like an architectural part.
Else, yeah.
that's unanimous.
No, it's more like an architectural engineer. So it's like how do you coordinate things? How do you manage different projects? And I think the way you said it is like we have to, in a way, we have to do this, and then so we can start displacing all this stuff, so we can actually start building it now. So I agree with that concept. There's only two properties here, small properties that I don't see it, and I totally understand the reason why. And I'll talk to Stuart because we have talked about in 2017 about those properties, one in Hudson, Hunter Street, and the other one between Main and State, which is a corner.
That's number 4. No, that's right at the triangle.
Correct.
I know
Either of them are
exactly which
buildable
property
at
you're
all.
talking
These
about.
are not buildable,
Right.
correct.
That-
The one in Hunter, we had an assessment value in that, and we're thinking of selling that property because there was having an issue. Again, I don't want to get into that.
Oh,
but-
I know the two
but
properties,
yes.
we can talk again, but I know which ones exactly you're talking about.
They do come up on, they come up on the list. They were just
Yeah.
really awkward small
Sure,
sites,
sure,
so.
sure. I totally,
That's fell
again,
off,
understand. I'm gonna look into the one in State in Spring Street, which is very interesting. But thank you.
Okay. So I think from the last meeting, I think that was the question on the table, RFQ or RFP, that piece or not. And then what's the next step? Because there was some timeline, so so did we all say, yeah, no?
So glad you asked.
Oh, okay.
So, I reached out to Rosemary Noonan, who was here. Rosemary has provided us with a quote to actually put the RFQ together for us. It would include things like the basic information on the village, the scope of the project, projected timeframes, submission criteria, evaluation standards. So it would be and written from a housing perspective. Her request for proposal is $7,000 for the basic services, and then she was asking for perhaps a $3,000 allowance in case it ran over. So we're really looking at about $10,000. I did read this over. It's written in a pretty general way. I would like to iron it down a little bit further as to what we were going to get in the proposal. And I was able to find a couple of past examples of proposals. But then HCR also said that they would help us develop that. So that was the next step, was to find out how much it would cost us to hire a consultant to put this together and to actually go out to bid. So reactions on cost.
I would just like to have like 2 or 3 options
Okay.
from different people just to compare.
Okay,
see
sure.
how they're different,
Yep.
And also, maybe I'll just do this on my own, is learn am I calling this right? An RFQ
Right.
consultant aid, basically
Right.
to aid the village in developing and writing the RFQ that will be released to potential
Developers.
Right.
Yeah, that was what they were explaining. Yeah.
Right.
And I'd like no way of answering the numbers since I have no idea and nothing to I have no clue and I don't know. I thought it was a non-for-profit. Is it her privately doing it or is it the not-for-profit
It's
that
the
she was?
Housing Action Council.
Oh, it's the council.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Okay.
happy to. It just came in today, so
No, I
was
understand.
happy that
It's
it did,
good.
so that we had at least
Okay.
something to talk about.
No, that's good. I just
Yeah.
I always, with anything, whether, I know it doesn't go out to, we don't do an RFP asking for this, but it's just always good to have options and not just
Sure.
one.
Or ask some people. I don't
Right.
know. They did have comments of people have done this in the past. Maybe we find some people and other.
Well, and I think
and
again,
just ask.
HCR can help us because
Yeah.
they can review them. They have drafts. They'll know exactly what we need. So
Okay.
Yeah, I think I just want to feel confident that you're recommending it, that you've
Mhm.
looked into if this is appropriate, if it includes everything you want, if you think it's a reasonable price and you're recommending it, then I want it to happen.
sure.
And we're still gonna have
Figuring
time.
out how to figure that out is all leave up to you.
Right.
Right, we'll have time for criteria like that. I think the difference with RFQ is that you're also sort of putting a challenge out there, if you will, to developers to be more creative than RFP, which is much more delineated.
Right.
Because we really were discussing mixed housing and, there's discussion here come from Tracey about parking, but that, how does that fit in?
Mhm.
I'd like to have, and I think Quantel brought up also an education component, like how does that, like what use, well, commercial versus not having commercial, parking versus not, all sorts of, so,
Sure.
and I think that's what an RFQ does, but also, I'm sort of asking for, how do we get started? And where's the board on this? I mean, did you say you are supportive or not supportive? I didn't understand.
So
After all,
I'm
weren't
supportive
you?
of the project. I'm just not supportive of making it the first priority when addressing all those properties. And when it comes to this, I'm supportive of hiring someone. Just would like to come
So that's a yes. Question. You said that I really don't want to get into the weeds of the RFQ, but I just want to make sure that the conversation that we had last time with respects to the RFQ and all the possibilities, like that's sort of kind of incorporated. Because as Rika had talked about, you know, I think we all got a little really excited about the possibility of this type of, instead of a commercial spot, there being like this type of center.
Center or
Yeah,
something.
some youth
Yeah,
center
he
or something
mentioned
like.
youth and I mentioned
Yeah.
education.
Yeah. So just making sure that it's not that whatever the sense of the board was at the time, because I can't really articulate it right now, but all those things are taken into consideration when we're looking at the
Good.
RFQ.
Yeah, those are all part of the community
Okay.
needs, community desires,
Okay.
so that it can be put in there that this is what the community is looking for. And so if you are qualified to come and build this type of facility, what would be your ideas?
Gotcha.
And qualifications is different than proposal, because proposal, they'd actually have to do up drawings, and so they have to spend a lot of money.
Gotcha.
And it's really better to work with somebody that you trust, that's done a proposal that says, I'm qualified to do this, I've done it in other locations, and I hear you, to come up with ideas.
Okay.
They did that for the Sing Sing Prison Museum. They actually put out an RFQ, and then they got way more than they thought they would. They got like 21 out of 30, and then they selected ones that could submit an RFP. Like you went
Right.
for one,
Okay.
so you got to get a little understanding of the firm and read a little bit about them.
Okay.
So it's kind of like get to know them first before they apply.
Yeah, and
Okay.
with that said, this is like, correct me if I'm wrong, at least for me, the past years, the first application RFQ in a while.
Mhm.
So that's why I just want to make sure that, and Rose's, from what I hear, is great. It's not about her organization, but just the village kind of, or the board really, and myself educating that we're consulting and being guided the right way, because we might have to do RFQs for other parcels in the future, right? So just to know how stuff, this is going to be the model one, right? So how it was done, and how it was selected, and then ultimately how it was issued.
Right.
I forgot one other thing I was going to mention, because Maddie, you and I were the only ones that were on the call from the board, I think, with the DRI discussion with the state. We talked about what would, because they were giving us recommendations of how we could improve our application for next year, and providing some tangible, you know, what are some of the projects. It didn't have to be shovel ready, because it could involve planning, but then it should also involve infrastructure or some sort of development. But one of the, and I can just tell you, the things that I wrote down, and then I recounted them. If you listen to the whole message, you'll hear Route 9 and coordinating with the DOT to do things beyond just restriping and changing lights or whatever, but to really make it an integrated welcoming experience for pedestrians, having, more medians or whatever the design level would be, and then implementing it in more of a substantial way than we would with a basic DOT. Sure, yes,
There you
exactly. Whatever it is, like we would re-envision how Route 9 can be, instead of being an obstacle to connecting our community, an actual connector. So that was one thing, and it does get a little more complicated when you deal with the DOT, but it's such a major thoroughfare in our community, and right now not always a positive one. We talked about the Sing Sing Prison Museum, tying that in because it's a priority project that people in the RADC are very familiar with and supportive of, but then particularly transit infrastructure to connect the museum to the rest of our downtown, which would be, and our waterfront. And they really liked us talking about the waterfront a lot. Waterfront is like something they're really into. They like seeing that we're making progress in those areas, so updating our comprehensive plan is helpful for our application. We did also talk about the potential for a GIS form-based code overlay district, similar to what we saw New Rochelle do, and that's something that that could be part of our DRI application. But then they really hit on the fact that if we're doing planning, it shouldn't just be all a grant asking for planning money, but it should also be for tangible infrastructure things. And then the last big thing we talked about was the heart of our downtown and those Market Square properties and that intersection, and how we could use some help re-envisioning what that would look like and then actually paying for it. So, and then whether that's parking, whether that's just movement of pedestrians and vehicles, but actually paying for that. So just want you to know that when you're thinking about Market Square, we've been talking about it as a potential component of a project for the DRI application, which is probably going to be happening this spring. Once the budget's approved, then we'll have some sense of what, if it's likely to be announced in May. So,
Maybe timing-wise, what are we looking for? What are you looking for?
So I have this, and I'll get some additional quotes or get some more information on this that I can present to you either at the next work session or maybe as new business at the next meeting. I mean, I don't want to delay this too much. And then I just need your approval to enter into the contract and move forward.
Great.
Get started.
well, thank you so much, Tracy. That was really valuable. I mean, there were certainly some that are more ripe for development, like Market Square and DPW, and then, some that are, like even doing like the train station parking lots, I can envision that someday there are some communities that want to just have parking and houses right on top of it and TOD, but like that's not begging to be developed. Market Square is sort of begging to be developed. That is clearly not the optimal use of that property right in the heart of downtown. So
And there can be further, also we have some things that happen with Route 9, residual parcels that New York State owns, and I didn't even get into that, down that rabbit hole. And
Okay.
of course, we have the post office, which with their employee parking is, that they have next to the post office. So I didn't even look into some of those. Huh? No, it is. I only looked at our property. I didn't look at other government property, which is always something that maybe we can put our eyes on.
Give it back.
Yeah.
If I could just get our spot, I'd be so happy. All right.
It's a nice parcel.
Thank you for the feedback, everybody. Tracy, thank you so much. It was a great presentation. And I hope the community that's watching has a better sense of some of the parcels that we have around the village.
I also would be loath to take away the path that connects Acker Avenue. I'm more of a fan of a park and public use than building a house there, even though I like the idea of low-income private home. Pocket park would be great. All right.
Do you want to quickly talk about
Duly
this?
noted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do
Are we
wanna
doing
quickly
that?
talk-
That's not on the agenda, but we did get
I
an
mean-
email
I
on
mean,
that.
Or
we
can
can-
very quickly before Tracy leaves.
So I only have one comment.
Uh,
I haven't seen it.
Okay. I mean, do you want to come next week? We don't have to do this now.
I think we do.
no, I think now is good because we need to move forward.
All right, I'm looking at it.
It's two options, front and back.
This is what the email was about.
Yes, they are the same front and back. The text on it is the same. Once we have it confirmed in English, then we'll go back and have it done in Spanish. So it's important that everyone takes the time. We don't have to agree on the content right now. I think we should kind of get an idea of which front or back we like, and then give me feedback by email on content questions. Things that you think should be added, like I heard Quantel say he's looking for housing to be added to the how, and then other things like that.
That was my basic only comment.
Yeah. No, that's why I said it.
Okay.
I didn't mean to quote you or
No,
steal
that's
your
okay.
thunder.
That's okay.
It does say the words comprehensive plan in the what, but then in the little box over here, and I'm looking at the white side, the less blue side, click on planning our future. I mean, this is the comprehensive plan. Like, I think that's a real term. We talk about it as a comprehensive plan. It's important that people understand what that is, and it's the foundation for our zoning code, and it is planning our future, and it is laying the blueprint for who we are. But I like us to be consistent with. Like, we should be clicking on comprehensive plan, which is what we have it right now. Don't we already have
I
it?
do,
It's
and that was
with
one
that
of
little
the questions I asked. We had made it. We haven't. This is not published yet, so it would either be we call it comprehensive plan or planning our future, whatever. However you want to. Planning our future was just a more basic way to say comprehensive.
Yeah, I like planning our future.
Most people haven't been educated on those two words, on what we're doing, on what.
But once we do educate them, yeah. So that's going to be something that Tracy and I talked about. That's how she'll refer to it.
Well, it
going
is
forward.
our legal term in our zoning ordinance, so that's how we legally refer to it. This is a legal document that we'll be creating. That's just so we can call it planning, or the committee could say, name it in
The planning our future committee.
what it is that the actual plan should always at least have in the subtitle comprehensive plan for the village of Ossining. We could title it planning our future. We can title it a vision for Ossining, but somewhere on the front page of the document that's created, it should say the comprehensive plan, so it's identified correctly. You know, that's just the, you know, it is a legal document. It's referred to in our zoning ordinance, and it's in our code. So at some point, it should say it. I mean, I like educating them and calling it a comprehensive plan. But I think it's actually up to the steering committee. Really, is the branding of what this is when that steering committee gets together and what they think this should be called. I mean, they call it Envision New Rochelle, and I think Mount Kisco did something similar, but then it's like the comprehensive plan. So I really do think that it's up to the committee, the steering committee, to help name this. It's part of the branding. It's part of that communications and outreach. I think it's a little premature to be naming the project with a name. Right now, it is the comprehensive plan.
I don't think the mayor and myself are really like saying we should particularly just name it or have a conversation about naming, but just in reference to this public, this is the first piece that's hitting residents just for this purpose, regardless of legality or not, because we already know it's going to be called comprehensive plan. If the average Joe, anyone planning our future versus comprehensive plan, it just, I mean, that matters on this stuff. This is all we're going to be doing for at least for now.
So
I think
I'm going to be agreeing here with them because the bottom line is I could say this about lots of committees. You know, people can look at this and think it's for a whole bunch of different committees that they've heard about or read about. We've been interviewing for lots of committees. You have to at some point say it's the comprehensive plan because, you know, this is not the only thing people see every day. They're seeing thousands of pieces of paper around, and there are so many committees. We're going to be looking for people for some land use committees, and that's helping us to plan and helping us with that. So you gotta like call it a generic something somewhere on this piece of paper. You can brand something later on, but the generic word of, you know, what it is has to be somewhere here.
so for now, it is, so for now,
It's in the what?
you gotta,
No, we're
it's-
not adding anything.
so what I'm thinking what we should do for now is instead of saying click on plan or future, I'll keep it as comprehensive plan. And then when the steering committee has come together and they say envision Ossining, whatever it is, and then it changes, that's when the whole section, and then we can push it out with what the name of the steering committee, what they've branded it as. But for now, if we're going to say comprehensive plan, then we can direct them to comprehensive plan. Is that what I'm hearing?
The comprehensive plan is already mentioned in the what? Right? I'm sorry, but I just like the way it is, right? Because it automatically in your mind that's a tag.
Oh, go on the comprehensive plan link. Right, verse.
I mean, yeah, it's just a tagline. I just thought it was clever. I mean, the board can decide.
Whatever the tagline
Yeah,
is, but
I just thought it was a nice tagline.
Well, I think the tagline, what Tracey's saying is that's what's going to come from the steering committee. They're going to create the tagline. So if we're going to direct people to, like right now, if you go to the website, there's 3 different areas, and I put it all into the email that links you there. We can, but no, what I'm saying is that, like we have the FAQs, it's comprehensive plan FAQs. So that's all existing right now. What I then have, click on plan your future, I have to map it. So it has to say what you want to say. Would you then map it to plan your future FAQs, or would it be to comprehensive plan FAQs? However,
It can just be one.
No, because
You know
you
what?
can only
no,
call-
because when you click on one thing, when you click where it says comprehensive plan maps there 3 different ways right now from the home page, right? It's considered a committee. When it goes there, if we call it planning our future, but then I look at it like if we're going to call it comprehensive plan and then the steering committee calls it envision Ossining, we want to have called it comprehensive plan, then plan our future, and then that. I'm just thinking along the lines of saying it once and then changing it, and then it's official, we push it out, and then you've got the what, and you build on that, but then the marketing will direct you to that. I would say that the marketing envision Ossining becomes the how and the why, right? The what is the document, which is in all of our information, but that when we direct them to a section, that will be the branding. But she keeps saying we keep putting the cart before the horse. But
I'm not
this
opposed to the words planning our future. I just don't feel it's my role to determine those words and what they are. I do think it's the role of the steering committee. And I think that that comes at that point, that they help with that branding of that name. Might end up with that, but I just don't feel it's my role as the planner to, actually, I didn't write this. This was our copy editor that
Yes.
prepared this. So I do think it's the role of a committee to create that link and or that branding thing. And it's not necessarily that it would be bad that we had this, but I think it's some of the implications that once we set up our website is then resetting up our website with a new link and a new icon.
Because this page will live, and then the comprehensive plan content, the name of it will live. But then when we change it to the branding, then we've pushed it out. I'm looking at it from the pushing it out 3 times, as opposed to saying it once and then pushing out their agenda.
Clarify for me, what we're creating this, either this design or this design, English on one side, Spanish on the other side, as a flyer that we will take out into the community and say, hey, look what we're doing. Please get involved. This, and then it'll live there for a little while, but we're going to go well beyond this once we have subcommittees and we have surveys and outreach and public meetings. So what we need is something that's really clearly articulating how people are going to get involved and that we're embarking on this, right?
And that was the focus, was so that the average person who doesn't live in our world and doesn't know our technology and doesn't know our terminologies would understand what we're trying to accomplish. And that's what we really tried to get down to.
Right.
That first,
Okay.
You said you wanted to add something. What
I
was it?
just wanted the word housing.
Yeah, so underneath
And the how, and the how.
where
Are
you
you
would say
interested in
environment,
topics?
traffic, parking, new business, we will just add housing. That's a very,
And it
that is
fits in
very
that
simple
little
for
space. Yep, it'll be
her
perfect.
to do that. We just have to
Actually,
decide
like
where
this
we
side
want.
Gee, that's
So I
interesting.
happen to like this side.
Okay, can everyone just hold up their side?
I like this side. I also think that you should never, may I say that you should
is that the long
Wait,
one or
wait,
the
wait.
short
Well,
one?
I have no.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
don't produce things like this.
You like that one?
Because
You like
this
that
way
one?
Wait,
She-
you
she-
want it the other way.
No, no, no,
don't
keep it that way.
produce things like this.
Yeah, but
because
give the
you're
other side.
Hanging
wasting
chads.
Very expensive ink, okay?
Right.
This is environmentally not appropriate.
Oh,
This is a waste of ink.
Yeah.
They only
You're
did
right.
8 pieces
You're
of
right.
paper. Just
But,
8.
and it costs more money across the board.
Uh-huh.
But as a design look, I'm voting for this. I just
Okay.
want to make a comment on the other piece, is that I'm voting on this.
So we have.
Did you
one-
just change your
one on
mind?
This one?
No, no.
Okay, we have 3,
I
4
have-
on that
I have
one.
I'm
comments.
sorry. Oh, okay.
But it-
Yeah.
but it- this
To
is
the
my
mayor
design.
and Omar.
This is the one that you like. Okay,
It's just,
It's
you know,
3
are we
and 2.
lost?
okay. 3 to 2. All right.
You know,
With,
tonight.
so 3 to 2 with housing, but I'm not clear on, are we keeping it as,
One second. Omar, comments.
Sorry, just, it's just the branding, I mean, I know this is petty, but maroon and white, just fascinating. You know.
Oh.
The screen,
That's cute.
Pleasantville.
no, Pleasantville is green.
I'm thinking of the wrong one, sorry, one of them's blue and
No,
white.
but it's a cute idea, if you could do maroon,
Um,
if you could do it, sure.
so,
I-
I'm using this to go to the 10 places that I'm going to, so
Mm-hmm.
our own, doing it in our own way. Just, I like how it's written, but do we feel that the what is, the most important part for me is the what, right? Because if I don't have you in the what,
Right.
then you're not going to go into the how or why. Is that too vague? And maybe should it be vague? This is just me asking a question to you guys because I want to make sure that when I'm out there representing the board, I'm not like,
I looked at the icons. I think they cover an awful lot of stuff. Some of it is very literal, some is pictorial. I think they did a great job. The hands up thing is something we've used for committees. I think people familiar will use it. You know, I'm a big believer in, you know, white space and not overloading verbiage. So I think they've accomplished that. It's very easy. It's vertical, which I always find to be easy. This is a very easy graphic to design into 2x3 posters, which might go in Market Square and those things like that we don't ever use. Even if it's plasticated, I mean, any vendor can do that. It's a standard size, which is another reason I sort of like it. You know, the call to action here, I'm like, I think people will get that they should go on the site. I'm not sure if it really screams out at me, but I think it's pretty good. you know, and I think it's very consistent with a lot of, I think it's very easy on the eyes. I would imagine that you want to leave space, if I'm not mistaken, Spanish takes actually more letters.
We know.
So when you translate, this is a really good size font, but in the translation, I mean, housing is one word, so that's cool, but it
They
will
can
take
move
more
up
room
there
to
and they
do
got
it
a
in
little-
Spanish. There's
There'll be
no
just
place
less
to-
white space, I think, around it.
I was gonna say, so like this piece here will probably be made smaller, but there's room here.
Yeah, but I'm saying if we add
It'll
more
look-
than this, I mean, I'm more saying, what are the comments? Those are my comments,
yeah,
you know, that
Yeah.
I think it's the right, really proportionate, it's the right.
Fine, you sold me on it,
You
that's
know,
fine.
all of that. I'm just.
Wait, you're switching on me?
It's fine. We lost anyway. We lost. So bye, as a, lose graciously and embrace it.
All right. I only have one part that I want to just make sure I have the,
Oh,
on the other
village seal.
The seal itself.
Oh, the seal.
so,
So should we be adding the seal
yes.
to this?
It is a municipal government.
well,
But
Committee, it
I
probably
would
isn't
say that
flexible.
you could embed a seal into the hands.
Yeah.
You could
Oh,
have
that'd
the
be great.
designer just put it into the hands.
Okay. we'll find a good place
Doesn't look
for
like
it.
a-
But it's on our website. It's nice and
Yeah,
we'll find a home.
What was your question?
I like that.
I want to be clear on, is it planning our future or down here, or is it
But
going to be
just, okay,
comprehensive
so,
plan?
so in the why actually is what, you know, you were saying if you don't have somebody by the what, then you're not gonna have them, but the why is what's much more down to earth and the least jargony. Well, none of this is jargony, but this will result in a plan for Awnin's future that reflects the needs and priorities of all our citizens, which means a village that is, okay. I have a couple of, editorial comments. I don't ever use the word citizens because it's a loaded term in our community where we have a lot of residents that we serve that are not citizens. I would say residents
Okay.
or our whole community. I just think it's a nice goal to have, but not the reality of our history. Every decade or so, the Village of Awning updates its comprehensive plan. This is the first time we've done it in the lifetime of anybody who's alive after just 10 years.
Can't we just say Awning is updating its
Village of Austin.
Village of Awning?
Every day.
Or it's time to update our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like its time.
Right, it's time.
Village of Austin is updating its comprehensive plan. I mean, it's,
I don't know if you still got your answer, Jamie. You were asking about the whole plan.
That's okay. I was
So
gonna
the
come
planning
back
our
to it, don't
future,
worry.
the planning our future language, that doesn't make sense right now for what Tracey was saying. But all you're talking about is where it's listed right here because you want people to click on something. And right now we already have an existing icon that says comprehensive plan, which will likely, no, it's not actually, it's this. This is what you click on, actually. When you look on the website, it's like one of the three boxes you can. No,
Well, this is gonna be in paper, so no one's clicking on the paper.
No. But I'm saying if this is actually what I'm gonna click on, the actual icon I'm gonna click on.
Tracy just said we should just move down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do
I
that.
agree.
But then we'll say
Probably should
that,
have the web location.
That way we're consistent too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's on our web, it says.
it does. It does. It's right, and that's exactly where to get it. So what I'll do is I'll have her take the comprehensive plan box and put it on here, and she'll just build it from here. Okay.
Get your answer for planning our future.
Yes, sir.
You did?
I did. It's comprehensive plan for now. And then it's gonna become something else when the steering committee.
Except for Quantos.
Okay.
I think we all like planning our future.
what's next, please?
Thank you very much. Just snuck that in. That was good. Good.
This is good.
All right.
Progress.
Next, we're gonna move on to Stuart Kahan
Wake up, Stuart. You're on, my friend.
for the
Here we go.
awning permit.
Now, let's go, quickly. We got the following things. Penny and Ting is seeking an awning permit.
Yay.
133 Main
Okay.
Street. They got their certificate of appropriateness granted by the HPC. So I would simply like to put a resolution before the board next Wednesday approving the awning permit. If anyone is interested, I have a picture of what it is going to look like.
I'm in support of it, whatever it looks like, but I'm interested.
It's very
Oh,
cute.
might be in hot society. Very
That'll be
nice.
very cute.
Awnings come to us.
Oh, still?
Yes,
Exactly like hot societies. Nice.
Yay.
okay,
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
organic waste,
Okay,
IMA with Westchester County.
next we have our renewal of the organic waste IMA with Westchester County. This will run through March 21st of 2023. This is not the agreement that we have with the town, which is related to this, but this is our agreement directly with the county. And it has the pickup fee, which is currently at $17.35 per ton. We should be getting the 2019 rate fairly soon from the county. When we get that, we will then raise the rate that we charge to the town. So that's that, and I will just do a resolution authorizing the village manager to execute that agreement. Next,
Wait.
what?
Nothing.
Next.
Move it on.
Okay. Okay, fire department has advised that they have 2 surplus vehicles. One is the 1998 Ford, which was the bus, which is now simply a shell. So they are going to have a declaration of surplus. The other is the 1996 E1 engine. You may recall last year the board approved a resolution declaring as surplus for sale another engine. Bless you. That engine actually has been put back into service because the 1996 E1 has in fact become non-operational. So this one is now going to be put up for surplus. And we have both of those. So we'll get both VINs and we can do a resolution to the board.
Great.
Okay.
One more?
Next, 3 Westerly is seeking a cabaret permit. They did have one last year, so it would be similar to last year's. I did, at the manager's request, communicate with the owner of the location just to remind them that they are not allowed to basically put tents and
a whole,
picnic tables
in a
and
whole
other things
seating
on,
area on the park
on village
and close
property,
the park. Yeah.
and also to serve alcoholic beverage without our permission. So,
It's not our permission, they need some permission from the SLA too. I mean, it's their.
well, but no, but the lattice specifically provides that it has to be our permission as well.
Okay, well,
So,
They could also have music outside, right? Like if they wanted to have
yes,
it there.
that's specifically in the lattice.
Perfect.
They can have such music.
Unusual time.
It's going to be noon to 2 a.m.
Okay. Live there.
Last, which is not on the agenda, but I apologize.
it's okay, you saved the
Last year,
time.
last year the board approved the manager executing a memorandum of understanding between the village and historic Hudson River towns with regard to the $100,000 grant for the Sing Sing Prison Museum. That's specifically for the design. That was signed. It was sent up to DASNY. DASNY made a few changes to the MOU, mainly to better describe the grant. And as a result, they've asked if we could re-execute. I've reviewed it. It is essentially the same as the other one, again, with a few tweaks made by the DASNY folks. Jerry Fiella is getting HHRT to approve, and he will sign. I just want to get a resolution, again, authorizing the village manager so that she can sign the revision, and we'll get it up to DASNY. This will then put this directly in line for the $100,000 grant.
Great.
Any notable things, or is it just, clarifying language? You don't have to go through all
It's essentially, yeah, it's basically what it clarifies. It gives a greater history of the Sing Sing Prison Museum. It talks about the history of the grant, and basically, but in terms of the responsibilities of both the village and HHRT, those are effectively the same as before.
There is going to be, the next thing that you're working on for the
The
Sing
lease.
Sing is the lease. So last Saturday, the Sing Sing Prison Museum Board had a retreat to talk about the next 18 months and what's going on with this. In the next 18 months, they're hoping to open the preview center at the powerhouse, which will be sort of the introduction for people to be in the space and see what the plan is for the 2025 opening. And the village is, tasks to keep this process moving. This is the first one, and the next one will be the lease. And
It had been our hope that we were going to be able to short-circuit
Yeah.
the lease by doing it with a work permit.
yeah,
But the Department of the Office of General Services has indicated they want a lease agreement. They have already given the comments to the lease, so we'll be able to do that. It will be a 5-year lease, and in that 5-year period, we will either be able to ask for private legislation to get a 30-year lease from the state. It's a potential we could also ask the state to actually turn over the powerhouse to us, but the initial lease can be no longer than 5 years. So within that 5 years, that will give the prison museum the time to get the necessary special legislation to extend it. But the plan is to start, doing this as quickly as we can. I'll get the lease up to General Services. We have to make sure it's okay from a bond perspective. We discussed it with bond counsel, so we're moving.
Like, is that the update that you just did? Because you were ex officio. Are you ex officio on this committee? Or are they going to, I haven't seen them in a while. Are they presenting at some point, like an update?
I think it'd be great. We should invite Jerry or the board president to come and give us an update.
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 points of conversation last time. One was employment, like making sure that people, like the employment issue of hiring local and all sorts of stuff, but also parking. If I remember correctly, parking was a bit of a, like, open issue. So maybe we
working
could
on
ask them to
parking.
address that.
The issue of employment, just to, for Trustee Levin, contract's going to be let by the village. So these actually, Sing Sing Prison Museum is not letting any of the contracts. We're in charge of all the contracts.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't, I
The
don't
state-
think
the
I
state
realized
will-
that.
The state would not permit SSPM to be the
Oh, I
direct,
didn't know that.
so that's why
Okay, well, so
actually
that's-
we had to put ourselves into the middle of all of this.
Okay,
It's separate and operated, though, just for the public that's watching. It's
Sing Sing Prison Museum is a separate 501c3, not operated at all by the village. That is
not
correct.
starting a museum.
no.
But as for
Facilitating,
parking,
we're being the
We're just hoping.
the facilitator.
and
Yeah.
as for parking, I know that they're
They're
still
working on
They
it?
did get a parking study done.
Oh, okay.
And they are working with both docks, and Tracey has left, but I know that there were at one point some discussions also with the county, because you have the wastewater treatment
Yep,
plant there.
yep.
To see what parking facilities would potentially be available.
Okay, great.
Part of that will involve exactly what portions of the building you want to use, so that they could perhaps get parking there.
Great.
Thank you.
All good.
Well done, sir. Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We'll see you next week at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court facility. This meeting is adjourned.